Chapter 1247. After a while, not only did the gates of Chu Zijin's castle open, but the other 6 castles that had never made a move before also slowly opened their doors. Some were strong, some thin, some tall, some short, some old, and some young. Since then, the 7 Pyro Company players that Chun Guang had survived the first massacre world officially came out of seclusion. As soon as the 7 of them appeared in the outside world, they immediately caused a commotion. Countless players watched from below, and many of them even took the initiative to introduce themselves in an attempt to befriend the 7 of them. Some people even kowtowed and tried to become their followers, even if it was just a verbal promise. For example, if they were lucky enough to be assigned to the same quest space during this quest, they would ask the other party to take care of them. It was not that these players who took the initiative to seek refuge with them were not strong-willed, but there were millions of people in the world, and everyone had different principles in life. Some people were stubborn and persistent in overcoming difficulties with their own strength, but others were good at using all the resources they could use to look at anything calmly. Before making a decision, they would analyze the pros and cons in their minds. Bowing down to the strong might seem like a spineless act on the surface, but if they could really befriend these strong people, the benefits they could reap would be unimaginable. In the game, they could face a life-and-death crisis at any time. Teaming up with the strong would give them the greatest sense of security. They could also follow behind the strong and challenge opponents that they could not possibly defeat. However, these 7 people seemed to be very aloof and disdainful of others taking the initiative to seek refuge with them. They had no intention of expanding their influence or forming a team at all. Actually, these 7 castles were not built in a day. At first, they were just 7 courtyards. Although they were much better than the coffins next to them, and appeared to be unique, there were more than just these 7 courtyards in the vast city. However, the situation changed later. According to the people of the Yin family, who lived near the 7 castles, they watched the 7 courtyards change almost every time they were given a mission. When the other courtyards remained still, the 7 courtyards turned into 7 skyscrapers at an extremely fast speed, and then into 7 castles at an extremely fast speed. Other than the palace in the center of the city, there were no other buildings more magnificent than these 7 castles. As the 7 great castles continued to expand, the houses that were originally evenly distributed around the 7 great castles were constantly pushed away. The density of the houses around the 7 great castles increased, making the 7 great castles seem even more mysterious and special. What was even stranger was that no matter how noisy the people outside were, no matter how astonishing the treasures appeared in the trading market, the 7 castles remained motionless. No one could enter, but no one opened the door and walked out either. Everyone was baffled. In this game, players did not have to worry about their true identity being easily exposed. After all, every time they entered the game, their appearance would be randomly reset. As long as they did not expose their characteristics too obviously like some people, they could communicate with others without worry. The trading market was very important to the players. Everyone would receive different rewards from quests, and everyone's awakened abilities were different as well. A tool that was completely useless to one person could be a priceless treasure to another. Therefore, the players cherished the precious 1-hour buffer period before the start of each quest. They would often seize every minute and second to exchange with others in the trading market, set up stalls to sell their useless tools, and then use their reward points to buy some things that they needed. Although there were currently no large-scale trading intermediaries in the market, several large official organizations, led by the Heavenly Division, had a unique advantage when it came to trading. With a large number of members, the number of tools that could be obtained from each quest would be more. After the internal system distribution, the internal members' needs would be satisfied first. However, there would still be some people who could not be satisfied because of their special abilities or the types of tools that they needed. Similarly, there would also be some tools that were too unorthodox to be distributed. At this time, the Heavenly Division would bring the surplus tools to the trading market and first trade them for reward points. Then they would send members who were good at dealing with people to search for the tools that the members needed to buy. For a large organization like the Heavenly Division, that had close to 100,000 people, even if they managed to slip through their fingers, they would still be able to exchange more than 10,000 tools for each quest. Though the other large organizations were unable to reach such a scale, they were still superior to the solo gamers. Over the past 2 months or so, almost every player had obtained some sort of benefit from the trade market. After all, this was an absolute safe zone. Everyone was free to buy and sell, and no one could force anyone to buy or sell. As long as one had reward points, one would be able to find a tool that was suitable for one's abilities. Even if it wasn't perfect, it was better than having useless tools. However, the owners of the 7 castles ignored all the benefits. No one knew what they were thinking. Now that the castle gates were opened, the 7 strongest human gamers, who were second only to Chen Guang, were finally revealed to everyone. This was a huge boost to the morale of the gamers. Though there was competition among the human gamers, their biggest enemy was the celestial race, who viewed the lives of the mortals as worthless grass. Peasant and his companions were perplexed. They felt that their memories were in a mess. When the game started, the 7 of them didn't know that they were gamers. Chu Zijin, the producer of Hyper God, was the person who inserted the second half of the video of Chen Guang fighting the monsters into the main show. She had a different view of the second half of the video. She didn't doubt the authenticity of the footage. The video was given to her by Chen Guang. Chen Guang wouldn't speak without thinking, so there must be a reason behind it. She didn't expect the footage to be in the game. In her mind, she didn't know about the game. This was obviously contradictory to the 7 castles. With her talent, if she wasn't chosen, it would be the biggest joke in the world. Even within Tianguang Media, there was a similar situation. An employee who was fortunate enough to become a player did not believe in the heresy and took the initiative to test Chu Zijin. Unexpectedly, as soon as the words left his mouth, his identity was immediately reset. He was completely stripped of his identity as a player and returned to the life of an ordinary person. He could not remember the process of him becoming a player after all the hardships he had gone through to reach D-class. The gamer was kind. He thought that with Chu Zijin's talent and her relationship with Chief Chen, she would definitely be a core member of Chief Chen's team. He went to the pavilion closest to Chief Chen and established a relationship with Chief Chen. In the future, he would have the opportunity to become a peripheral member of Chen Guang's team. This was a benefit that others couldn't be envious of. He didn't get any benefits, and he committed a taboo. Chu Zijin's memory was erased because of this incident. She couldn't remember what the gamer had said to her. Now, she recovered her gamer identity and memory. She appeared as a level A warrior. Just now, when her body was gradually taking shape, the memories surged in like a tidal wave. Only then did she know what had happened during this period of time. She understood that in the past 2 months, there were many changes in the world that she didn't understand. She was a gamer from the beginning. It was just that she had been locked in an independent mission space. It was as if everything had happened in her sleep. Moreover, while other players had retained their memories and were doing well, her mind had been locked. Every time she participated in a mission, her memory would be isolated. She had only recovered now. The story of all this started half a month before the game's arrival. They had experienced the slaughtering world with Chen Guang. Under Chen Guang's care, they had grown rapidly in the extremely special slaughtering world, completing 2 awakenings at an unbelievable speed and becoming C-rank players. Moreover, they were blessed by the heavens with unique abilities and talents. The confusion on everyone's faces was because they were recalling these things. So many unexpected things had happened in this period of time. The 7 of them ignored the crowd in front of them and turned to look at the palace in the center of the city. That was Mr. Chen's residence, right? How strong was he? Chapter 1248. Another few minutes passed. Seeing that the masters of the 7 great castles were being unreasonable, the numerous players who had intended to bow their heads could only quickly and resentfully retreat. Everyone either had some items on hand waiting to be sold, or had saved up enough reward points to purchase some treasures that matched their abilities. They didn't know what the mission this time would be like. Perhaps they would have a slim chance of survival. Even if they could slightly increase their own strength, it would be good. At the very least, those who didn't have items to sell and didn't have reward points to purchase items would at least want to stroll around the market and see if there was anything they fancied. If possible, they would promise more generous rewards. Both sides could agree on a place to meet again before trading. The distribution of this strange city was quite orderly. Although there wasn't any difference between each E-rank coffin, this wasn't a problem for humans. The players agreed to use the tallest statue of the naked man as the north, and then according to north, south, east, and west, they divided the area into 4 areas, A, D, and D. Afterwards, they broke it down according to the distance from the central palace, and then divided each area into 9 blocks from 1 to 9. Both sides could agree on a secret signal, and agree on a place to meet next time in a certain area, which row, and which latrine house with eaves. At the very least, even if they didn't gain anything in the market, they could at least make some friends. Perhaps everyone would be assigned to the same space for this mission. When the time came, they could make some connections outside in advance. At the very least, they could have an additional ally at the start of the mission. Although this kind of temporary alliance wasn't reliable, and there were many cases of allies backstabbing each other in the back, no matter how fragile an alliance was, it was better than nothing. It was better than making contact with complete strangers. As for the 7 great castles that were revered by the people, they all walked towards the palace in unison. Lu Fei, who had originally only vaguely guessed that the strongest person in the slaughtering world was Chen Guang, was now certain in his heart. That archmage right Chen Guang who deserved a beating, that shameless Chen Guang, you really deceived me miserably. I knew that a magister from another world wouldn't be so simple as to just be an idle boss. You must have a purpose. This game must have been created by you. Are you doing this to return to your world? Are you trying to abandon us all? See if I don't teach you a lesson. Lu Fei clenched her fists fiercely. I, your sister, am different from before. I'll let you have a taste of the power of the second block. It was guaranteed to be 10 times, or even 100 times more powerful than those so-called masterpieces made from super silicone gel. Cough cough. For some reason, Lu Fei's steps were a little light. Almost at the same time, 7 people appeared outside the palace. At this time the area was empty. Almost all the other players had gathered at the trading area. Chen Guang, on the other hand, couldn't make up his mind in the palace. Should he summon these people in and make them his subordinates? Needless to say, Chu Zijin and sister Lu Fei were both trustworthy people. But as for the others, it was worth discussing. Although they were all A-class, in terms of actual combat power, the amount of help they could provide him was rather limited. He was a level S expert, and these people were far inferior to him. In a high-intensity battle, they wouldn't be of much help and might even become a burden. For more information, please refer to the first slaughtering world. When the 7 of them arrived, they looked at each other. Only Rubber Gal and Peasant started chatting softly. The other warriors stood behind them and didn't say a word. In the slaughtering world, Mr. Dang was the friendliest to Peasant and Rubber Gal. It was obvious that he was old acquaintances with the 2 ladies. Furthermore, although Chen Guang's appearance and figure were completely different from the slaughtering world, there was a voice in the hearts of the 7 that told them that the 2 of them were the same person. They didn't understand how Mr. Dang changed his appearance to that of Chen Guang in God of Joy. Perhaps it had something to do with the birth of the game world. He had played a big game of chess. What was he plotting? Even the most arrogant genius high school student had the illusion that their fate was in someone else's hands, and that they were completely in someone else's control. It didn't mean that he didn't want to surpass Dang Wu or Chen Guang, but he knew the chances were slim. Instead of trying to surpass him in vain, he might as well make use of the opportunity. He had gotten to know him in the game from the very beginning, and become his lackey. There were 7 of them, including Dang Wu himself, so there were 8 of them. To others, the price of a team contract for 8 people would probably be sky-high, and they wouldn't be able to afford it at all. However, to Mr. Dang, it was definitely not a problem. There was only one problem. Was he willing to accept them? Peasant, if I'm not mistaken, Your real identity is Chief Chu of Tianguang Media? You were the one who leaked the video. Lu Fei lowered her voice and used a special technique to speak softly. Chu Zijin nodded and said, "It's me. I know your sister Lu Fei, and I've heard of you in real life. It's a pity that I didn't have the time to meet you. I didn't expect to meet you here. This is fate. We're both his women, so we're on the same side." Lu Fei laughed. Chu Zijin blushed and said, I have nothing to do with him." It was Lu Fei's turn to be shocked. "It can't be? I saw Tianguang Media's report on television. You're a delicate little beauty. Why would he let you go? This isn't his usual style." "Sister Lu, you're joking. There's nothing between me and the boss. Forget it, that's not important. I just don't know what's going on in this guy's head. It seems that the 7 of us are indeed a little different from the other players." Lu Fei turned her head to look at the surroundings. She was thinking about how Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan, whom she had met once on Mount Baylor and had a fortuitous encounter together, were faring now. Based on what the 2 little girls had shown, they were definitely players as well, right? The vicinity of the magnificent imperial palace was empty. Only the bustling sounds of people could be heard from the distant market. I asked around on the way here just now. They said that although most players are solo players or in small teams, many large organizations in the real world have expanded their organization structure into the game. For example, in China, there is an organization called Heavenly Division. It is very powerful. The elven archer behind Chu Zijin and Lu Fei couldn't help but speak after there was no movement from the imperial palace. Heavenly Division. Lu Fei and Chu Zijin muttered softly. They felt that the name was both familiar and unfamiliar. A name appeared in the hearts of the 2 of them, but there was a strong sense of distance between them. "Isn't it called Tianguang Media?" Chu Zijin seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be asking someone else. Lu Fei was about to nod, but she subconsciously shook her head, as if the Tianguang Media had never existed. The hale and hearty old man, who had been silent all this while expressed his opinion. "I know this division. It's called the Heavenly Division. After this mission, I'll ask Oh no, Mr. Chen. If he agrees, I'll join the Heavenly Division. He's the minister of the Heavenly Division. He definitely wants us to join the Heavenly Division." A middle-aged man with the demeanor of a soldier behind the old man said loudly. "That's right. It's our duty to obey military orders. Even if it's not in the game, we'll still follow orders in real life." Lu Fei asked, "Wait, you're saying that Chen Guang is the minister of the Heavenly Division?" "That's right." The old man nodded. Lu Fei felt that her thoughts were a little messy. She vaguely remembered that Chen Guang had a nickname called Swollen Chrysanthemum. Back at Mount Baylor, Wu Miaowan often used this nickname to tease Chen Guang. Then he should be the director. But it didn't seem like that had happened. At this time, the palace gate finally opened. Chen Guang slowly walked out and stood in front of everyone. The old man and his 2 followers, the middle school student and the archer, bowed in unison. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who were familiar with each other in real life, didn't seem that afraid. However, their behavior was much more respectful. Chen Guang had already made a decision. He walked forward and pointed at Lu Fei and Chu Zijin. "You 2 will team up with me. This is the team contract. Take it." Then he pointed at the old man and his followers. "If I'm not wrong, the 3 of you are from the military, right?" "Yes, Mr. Chen." The old man bowed and said, "Mr. Chen should have seen me before." Chen Guang squinted at him for a while and thought about it. "You're not old, but you're not young either. You should be the old man who sat at the end of the table when I attended the meeting in Yanjing." "Yes, it's me. But as long as Mr. Chen is willing to let me join the Heaven Division, even if I have to start as a small soldier, I won't say a word." Chen Guang smiled. "That's not necessary. Whether it's your battlefield experience or your current A-level strength, you're 1 in a million. I won't use a small soldier to humiliate you. How about this? I'll allow you to open a special combat team in the Heaven Division. Your position will be second only to me and the 2 deputy ministers. What do you think?" "Thank you, Minister Chen." In fact, when the old man said that Chen Guang had seen him before, Chen Guang had already guessed the old man's identity. However, He didn't call him out because he wanted to protect him. Tan Zhaohua, the commander-in-chief of Shun's special training camp, was considered a relatively young and vigorous person among the old men. Many years ago, he was the king of soldiers on the battlefield. Now that he was old, he had become the commander-in-chief of Shun's special training camp. In these years, he had trained many special combat elites for the country. Even China's most elite teams, such as Dragon's Fang, Spirit Blade and Piercing Wolf, came from Shun's special training camp. Of course, after Chen Guang personally became the chief instructor and started a batch of training, the elite soldiers produced by Shun's special training camp rose to another level. Apart from the members who entered the Heaven Division, there were also many soldiers scattered in various departments. When he first met Chen Guang, Tan Zhaohua never thought that one day he would become his subordinate. But now that it really happened, Old Man Tan didn't resist at all. After making arrangements for these people, Chen Guang turned his head to look at the last middle school student. The middle school student didn't seem very submissive. Instead, he looked straight at him with a face full of expectation. Chen Guang smiled. "You little brat, I don't know you very well, but I think very highly of you. If I rashly let you form a team, I'll be adding more restrictions to you. Rather than that, I'd rather let you go and let you develop freely. With your current A-rank realm, and that special ability of yours, as long as you don't provoke a god emperor like Yu Ting, I'm afraid the Protoss won't be able to do anything to you." The middle school student laughed. "But I want to follow you more. It'll be easier that way." Chen Guang waved his hand. "Before you say something like that, think carefully first. Do you want to touch and surpass your own limits? Or do you want to be a carefree person? Following me will indeed allow you to start off faster and avoid many dangers. But this isn't necessarily a good thing for the cultivation of your personality. In my opinion, I hope that you can explore it yourself. But if you really want to rely on me, of course I don't mind." The middle school student pondered for a moment, then turned around and left decisively. Chen Guang thought for a moment, then said from afar, "I have an idea to set up a few peripheral organizations for the Heaven Division. When you've found a few people you trust, you can come find me again. When that time comes, I'll let you be the peripheral organization of the Heaven Division. You won't have much responsibility, but you'll be able to share information about the Heaven Division." The middle school student was overjoyed. He turned around and said, "Thank you, Mr. Chen." Then, Chen Guang looked at the elven archer. Back then, the few arrows he'd shot at her had been extremely painful, which meant that she was still quite capable. However, Chen Guang didn't know much about her, so he wasn't very willing to give her a precious team contract. But if he excluded her now, it would seem unreasonable. Also, back in the slaughtering world, as a member of Chu Zijin's team, she was very cooperative. She could even form a combo with Chu Zijin. Chen Guang thought for a moment, then said to her, "I can't give you the team contract for now, but I hope that you can join the Heaven Division. What do you think?" The elven archer looked at Chu Zijin with disappointment, but seeing Chen Guang's determined expression, she didn't insist. "That's fine. Don't be unwilling. Although there are no players above grade C in the Heaven Division, there are 100,000 strong people in the Heaven Division. Everyone can communicate with each other and be assigned together. Whether it's personal development or the sharing of resources, it's not something that ordinary people can compare to. Your ability is heavy on offense and light on defense, so you're not suitable to work alone. Your personality is also relatively gentle, so you're suitable to team up with others. Unlike that brat who's arrogant. Rather than becoming an insignificant character in my team, it's better for you to create your own dagger team in the Heaven Division. In the future, your achievements might not be inferior to that brat." It was rare for Chen Guang to explain a bit more. Old Tan, who was beside him, also nodded and said, "Mr. Chen is the head of the Heaven Division. Becoming a member of the Heaven Division will naturally be under his protection." This made the elven archer feel much more at ease, and her face lit up with joy. "Thank you, Mr. Chen." After making arrangements for these people, Chen Guang wanted to lead Chu Zijin and Lu Fei into his palace. Unexpectedly, when the two of them passed by the door, They were firmly blocked by an invisible wall, unable to take a single step in. Chen Guang had an awkward expression on his face. Did this unlucky cup see through his crafty plot? Sister Lu Fei with a rubber body. All kinds of positions, cough cough. Forget it, forget it. Looks like even if we're in a team, we can't enter other people's private residences. You two don't need to worry about me for now. Go to the market. I've already notified Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan. You two go contact the Heaven Division's trading group and see if there are any items suitable for you. Since he couldn't complete his proper business, Chen Guang didn't want to delay the two of them any longer. He told them to hurry and find items that could increase their strength, so as to not waste time. As for why he didn't go himself, it was because he felt that with his current strength, it was unlikely that he would be able to obtain any usable items from this kind of trading market, unless a large number of A-rank players appeared among the players. At that time, they might be able to find something they needed. After waiting for another half an hour, accompanied by the inexplicable ringing of a bell in the sky above Cloud City, the countless people gathered in the trading point instantly tensed up. The players who had already completed their transactions were either sitting cross-legged on the ground, closing their eyes and praying silently, or stubbornly looking up at the sky with resolute eyes. The players who had yet to complete their transactions sighed dejectedly. In the end, they still couldn't find the items they needed. Hopefully, this mission wouldn't be too overpowered. Those who were in the middle of a transaction were frantically urging the other party to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. On the other side of the world in a cup, in the endless celestial world, countless gods stood up at the same time. The call from the origin of the celestial world came from the bottom of their hearts. A strong sense of mission enveloped the hearts of all the gods. Another game was about to begin. This time, they must continue to ruthlessly crush the humans. Now the gods could already feel the benefits provided by the origin of the celestial world. As long as they performed better in the game, they would be closer to the origin of the celestial world, and they would be able to experience unprecedented benefits in their cultivation. Chapter 1249. Different from human civilizations, there were all kinds of temptations. Money, power, beautiful women, handsome men, and even rankings in online games could be temptations for different people in life. Every one of these temptations could make people unconsciously stop moving forward. No matter what industry it was, only those who had no distractions could reach the peak. But even human beings who could reach the peak were still unorthodox in the eyes of the gods. The gods of the endless god realm only had one goal in mind: to make themselves stronger. Even though there were professions such as trade and research in the endless heavenly realm, the fundamental purpose of doing business in the endless heavenly realm was to earn resources and strengthen oneself. Or they could study in the endless heavenly realm. The knowledge in the endless heavenly realm was completely different from that of humans. They researched how to cultivate more powerful mercenary beasts, how to use elemental energy more rationally and efficiently, or how to cultivate magical medicine. These were the areas that the gods were interested in. Even if one was a journalist or historian in the endless heavenly realm, they could find traces of these great existences, becoming stronger from the illusions and deeds of other powerful gods, and get close to the true meaning of their power. Unlike the chaos of humans on Earth, all the actions of the gods in the endless heavenly realm had only one purpose: to obtain more power. A technological civilization like the humans on Earth was nothing in the eyes of the gods. Not to mention the master gods who own hundreds of millions of planes. Even the god kings who could only build a few secondary planes could breed advanced technological civilizations in their own planes that were many times more advanced than the humans on Earth. The fundamental purpose of raising a technological civilization was to use the power of these technologies to pry into the mysteries of the laws. The quantum physics of the humans on Earth was just the most basic of the foundations of science and technology in the endless heavenly realm. Now, after hundreds of millions of years of silence, the peaceful endless heavenly realm was once again stirred up. The origin will had placed this so-called game in front of the gods. The gods only needed to use a portion of their divine will to form a projection, and they would be able to complete the task. Moreover, As their levels in the game continued to recover, their true bodies in the divine realm would also be able to feel the origin will's care more clearly. The primordial laws that were originally extremely far away in the fog would become clearer under the blessing of the origin will, as if they could reach out and touch them. Such cultivation conditions were enough to drive many gods crazy. Even the most powerful Lord God would not dare to say that his divine thoughts could be completely close to the primordial law, let alone those divine emperors, ultimate gods, and divine kings. Even if they only had the chance to look at the primordial laws from afar, it was enough to make these gods go crazy. The summoning from the bottom of their hearts was getting stronger and stronger. The gods, who were mentally prepared, slowly opened their arms and allowed their minds to become more active than ever. A sense of joy that went straight to the depths of the divine soul came. The divine thoughts of the gods soared into the sky, passed through the long tunnel, and appeared in the brand new world structure. The mission this time had finally begun. Eighth brother, do you think we'll have a chance to meet that guy called Noon? If not, give me a Chen Guang. Those mortals always told me not to be arrogant, that the true genius of humanity, the almighty Superman Chen Guang, would show me how powerful he was. Bah! What omnipotent! Superman! How vulgar! Disgusting! Low level! I can't come up with such a vulgar and lacking nickname, even if I use my 10 billion years of life. Shut up! Idiot! I've told you 100 million times not to call me eighth brother. Yes, eighth brother. Do you really want to die? I repent to you, respected Lord Eight Directions. The 8 divine emperors no longer paid attention to the follower beside them. Instead, they frowned and looked at the mysterious world in front of them. As for the noisy follower beside him, his mind was still thinking about the incident between Noon and Chen Guang. The name Noon came from Wethany. Her purpose was to remind the gods not to let their guard down, just because the human players were weak. The experts among humans were indeed unfathomable. As for the name Chen Guang, it came from the mouths of many human players. Although this rank A follower had never personally fought against human players, there were people in their party who had dealt with human players many times. Many of them would say this name before they died. It was obvious that Chen Guang's ability held an extremely high position in the hearts of all humans. As for the leader of this party, the youngest of the 10 strongest divine emperors in the endless celestial realm, the expression on his face was exceptionally interesting, just like a certain someone he had once deeply admired a trillion years ago. The young 8 Directions would always give it his all in whatever he did, leaving no regrets. Even though it was just a game, 8 Directions still put out 200% of his focus, and led his team to take root in the game as quickly as possible, developing and growing. Now the 8 Directions party had become the second strongest party in the celestial realm, second only to Yu Ting's party. He was not convinced. He believed that Yu Ting had merely taken advantage of the advance party. If he had been the one to lead the advance party to the celestial realm for the first time, he would have been able to leave more seeds for the endless celestial realm. He would not have been like Yu Ting, who had almost been wiped out. As a divine emperor who led the celestial realm, he had actually been defeated by a pigeon. Wasn't that ridiculous? With the power of the 8 Directions party, what was a mere game to him? In these few missions, his actions did not disappoint his ambitions. However, faced with the scene in front of him, he felt like a cow gnawing on a pumpkin. Even as talented as he was, he still could not understand why such a strange scene would appear. The previous few missions were either about snatching resources or killing powerful phantom beasts. Otherwise, it was simply a competition for survival. There was even a survival challenge that completely restricted all special abilities in the middle of the mission. It was a reference to the games in the human world. That game was called PlayerUnknown's Battleground. The players who participated had to parachute, run away from the blue circle, and hold a gun, etc. In the end, it was 8 Directions himself who relied on his superb reflexes and planning ability to transform into a Voldemort at the last moment, and successfully fought against 5 enemies with an 8x scope. Then at the end of the mission, there was some line like "Great luck, chicken dinner." The 8 Directions Divine Emperor almost failed miserably in this mission. He did not have a good impression of this strange line. What right did he have to eat chicken dinner? There was no day or night in the endless celestial realm. Why couldn't he eat during the day? And why did he have to eat chicken dinner? As a god, he had not eaten inferior livestock for many years. Food that could not enhance his strength was simply a waste of life. But what was this now? What appeared in front of him was a bottomless abyss with a diameter of 10 kilometers. From top to bottom, this abyss was densely covered with countless floating islands. These floating islands were of different sizes and had different sceneries. For example, the floating island that the 8 Directions Divine Emperor was standing on should be at the highest point of the entire abyss. It covered an area of about 1 square kilometer and was covered with green trees. Above their heads, they could even see the seemingly real sun in the sky. In the middle of the island, there was a pool of clear water. The scenery was extremely beautiful. The warm sunlight shone on him, making him feel warm from the bottom of his heart. He had already enjoyed the glory of the celestial realm. In fact, there were countless beautiful sceneries in the dimension that he had created with his own hands. However, now that he felt that his power was greatly restricted, he felt a chill run down his spine. He still had his S-class combat power, but the ability to fly had been completely taken away. In this small dimension, it was as if the rules of flight had been tampered with. Even a god emperor like him could be completely suppressed and could not be disobeyed. This was an extremely small dimension, but the rules here were so strong that even a god emperor could not resist them. It seemed that the content of this game was richer than he had imagined, as expected of an existence that even the origin will attach great importance to. On the other side of the same floating island, 70 to 80 human players had gathered together and were whispering and arguing. Clearly, everyone was at a loss when faced with this novel mission space. The mode this time seemed to be too special. The function of the party contract is to automatically assign us to a space when we enter the mission space. At the edge of the crowd, a man and 2 women were gathered together. The man was handsome, and the woman was beautiful. They appeared to be quite outstanding. However, they seemed to be a contracted party and had no interest in communicating with other people. They appeared to be unfriendly, and the other players could not approach them even if they wanted to. The one who asked this question was Lu Fei, who had transformed into a rubber girl. Chen Guang nodded. That's right. That's why I cherished the contract so much. I'm not familiar with those people. The price of this party contract is increasing exponentially. If I spend it on these people, God knows how expensive it will be in the future if I want to increase the number of slots. The spaces that Sister Lu and I experienced before were all similar to the Killing World. This is the first time we've encountered such a novel game mission. I wonder what it will be like. Chu Zijin stood at the edge of the floating island and looked down. She looked up again and continued. Above is the sky. Below us, we can vaguely see floating islands of different sizes. I just don't know how deep this abyss is. Chen Guang really wanted to tell her in advance that this was the jumping world. In this old man's humble opinion, it must be jumping down from here, layer by layer. However, he could not say it. The mission description had not been released yet. If he said it in advance, wouldn't people know that he was the one causing trouble? In addition, although he knew that this mission was related to jumping off a building, he did not know how the world in the cup would be reflected. He could only take it one step at a time. Chen Guang turned his gaze to the other side. There was a group of about 20 Protoss gathered together. The man in the middle was handsome. In terms of handsomeness, he was almost as handsome as himself. Alright, this guy relied on his looks to make a living. That's too much. He's even more handsome than me. Fortunately, I rely on my talent to survive. In addition, Chen Guang felt a familiar fluctuation from this Protoss. If he guessed correctly, this Protoss's individual strength was even comparable to Yu Ting's. He should also be a god emperor. Chen Guang sighed. He did not know whether he was too unlucky or too good at attracting hatred. Didn't they say that there were very few S-rank Protoss players? Why did he meet one the moment he arrived? Chapter 1250. While Chen Guang was looking at 8 Directions, 8 Directions was also looking at the human players. Although he was arrogant, His character of a lion going all out to catch a rabbit made him never underestimate any opponent. Although he did not know why the origin will chose such weak human opponents for the gods, he had heard that this planet was born in the center of the original plane, with an extremely high realm. Although the human beings who grew up on this planet seemed to be weak, they had unimaginable creativity and willpower. After these few game missions, the terrifying potential displayed by these mortal players still made the 8 Directions Divine Emperors secretly shocked. These human beings seemed weak, even as fragile as ants, but no matter how difficult the mission was, there would always be some amazing people among them who would turn bad luck into good luck, or adapt to various difficult mission environments at an extremely fast speed, and then continue to grow and strengthen. 8 Directions still remembered that in the beginning, these players were only E-level strength. When faced with the Phantom Beast, they could not fight back at all. However, after a short period of panic, they soon exerted their own abilities, used various ways to exert the strength of the team, and killed the seemingly invincible Phantom Beast. At this time, there was a voice in 8 Directions' heart. If he completely followed the origin will of the heavenly realm, what he should do at this time should be directly and neatly obliterate all the human beings who were unlucky enough to be assigned to the same subspace as him in this mission. But another voice told him that if the person who disappeared for tens of trillions of years was here, he would definitely not do this. As great as he was, he never feared any challenge, let alone any opponent who might possibly challenge him in the cradle. He would even personally help the opponent. He was eager to be challenged, and he was never afraid of challenges. He was even keen to personally train opponents for himself. Just like countless years ago, when he was just a newly born mortal god, not even as good as an ant in the endless heavenly realm, he was found among the living beings and personally given a cultivation method. However, after countless years of cultivation and killing, he finally became a domineering god emperor from an ant-like mortal god. But he was not even qualified to challenge him, because he had already disappeared into thin air after leaving behind countless legends. He did not become the next Lord God as the gods had speculated, but inexplicably disappeared at the peak of his glory, leaving no trace. Even though his fans had gone to the ends of the earth, spreading their spiritual power to all the secondary planes and small worlds that he had personally created, they still couldn't find any trace of him. It was as if this peerless genius who had once dazzled the entire endless god world for billions of years had never appeared. Master Bafang, there's something I don't understand. Speak. I don't understand why you don't allow us to attack mortals. They are just ants. How can they compete with us fairly? You don't even understand the characteristics of this mission, but your mind is only thinking about killing people. So what if mortals compete with us? Wouldn't it be enough to defeat them head-on? If you don't have the heart of a powerhouse fearless of competition, you'll never be able to break through to the king realm. This subordinate understands. In the distance, Chen Guang pricked up his ears to eavesdrop on the conversation, and a smile appeared on his face. It seemed that the 8 Directions Divine Emperors were not bad people. They knew how to restrain their subordinates. In this aspect, they did a better job than Yu Ting. After a while, Chen Guang finally heard the long-awaited electronic beep. The mission had begun. The beep was very concise. The jumping challenge will begin in 5 minutes. Jump off the floating island before the obliteration barrier descends, and successfully reach the next floating island. The beep was very brief. Both the humans and the Protoss players were confused. 5 minutes later, however, everyone no longer had the time to wonder. Roughly 30 meters above the players' heads, a multicolored screen of light appeared out of thin air. Immediately after, the screen rapidly enveloped the players below. The towering trees on the floating island were the first to bear the brunt of the light. Then, under the dumbfounded gazes of the players, the trees disintegrated into fine powder at an extremely fast speed. This damn thing will kill you if you touch it. A young man in the crowd suddenly clapped his hands and said in a clear voice, D***men. I understand now. The people around him turned to look at him. What do you understand? Isn't this 100 floors for men? What's that? It's a little game that was popular a few years ago. You have to keep jumping down. If you're slow, you'll be blocked. Or if you hit something, you'll die. Another person who was born in the 80s came over and nodded repeatedly. Oh, yes, I played that game back then. It's quite similar to what we're seeing now. What else is there to say? Hurry up and jump down. Looking at the so-called obliteration barrier that was getting closer and closer, everyone's hair stood on end. Not to mention the trees. Even a few hills nearby were instantly flattened by the obliteration barrier. Fortunately, they had 5 minutes to prepare. Both the human and Protoss players had arrived at the edge of the floating islands. However, when they poked their heads out and looked down, they hesitated for a moment. The distance between the floating islands was too far. It had to be at least 200 to 300 meters. Even a cat would not be able to survive jumping from such a high height. What was even more infuriating was that the two floating islands were not completely aligned with each other. They were at least 100 meters apart. This meant that if they jumped from here, not only would the height be terrifying, but they would also have to jump forward. Otherwise, who knew how deep the abyss they would fall into if they jumped directly over it? However, they did not have much time to hesitate. The obliteration barrier above their heads was getting closer and closer. No one wanted to test if this light curtain, that contained the power of the rule, could really disintegrate them. When they were less than 5 meters away, the Emperor God of 8 Directions took a deep breath and waved his hand. Jump. Be careful not to use too much force. We'll meet at the next floating island. As he spoke, he turned his head to look in other directions. Seeing that the mortals were still hesitating, he sneered. Perhaps there would be a strong person among the mortals who could rival him sooner or later. But it would definitely not be this group of people. Just as he was thinking about this, a man and 2 women suddenly jumped out. The man was in the middle, and the 2 women held his hands from both sides. They took the lead and jumped straight down. The arrogance on Emperor God's face disappeared instantly. Although he did not deliberately compare himself to them, he did not expect that there would really be humans who would dare to jump with him first. The actions of these 3 people were like a silent slap to his face, making him lose face. Not only that, but the mortal players who were originally standing beside the 3 people also seemed to be encouraged by the 3 people and followed suit. The 20 or so Protoss players who reacted half a beat slower actually fell behind. No longer caring about his anger, the Emperor God of 8 Directions said loudly, "Jump." This so-called jumping challenge is likely to be based on the landing time. Hearing that, he hurriedly jumped after them. After flying into the air, he subconsciously wanted to use his divine power to fly. However, as soon as this thought came to him, the divine power in his body was suddenly cut off by an inexplicable force, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. This was indeed the power of the rule of absolute flight restriction. That was not all. After he flew into the air, a new prompt suddenly appeared in the mind of the Emperor God of 8 Directions. This prompt was a GIF, which people on Earth called a GIF. The GIF was a video of a Chinese female athlete participating in the 2008 Yinjing Olympics, and the mysterious mission space actually asked him to perfectly replicate this action. The Emperor God of 8 Directions was about to follow the prompt when he heard a scream coming from above him. He subconsciously looked back and saw that when one of his subordinates jumped out of the floating island, his clothes were too complicated, and the hem of his clothes was hanging on a sharp stone at the edge of the floating island. This slight delay immediately caused half of the sea-level Protoss player's body to be enveloped by the obliteration barrier. And then he was completely torn to pieces without any struggle. Feeling that the spiritual imprint of this subordinate had completely disappeared, the Emperor God of 8 Directions' expression suddenly became extremely serious. Skill score 0, art score 0. Warning player, Emperor God of 8 Directions. Consecutive 0 points will be directly obliterated. The mission space's prompt came again, and the Emperor God of 8 Directions' expression finally changed. Because he was distracted just now, he could not repeat the action, and was actually warned by the system. An unprecedented sense of crisis rose from the bottom of his heart. It was obvious that this non-combat mission space was more dangerous than any previous ones. Chapter 1251. This game mission is too playful. Is that all? We have to jump off a building and perform diving maneuvers at the same time? Lu Fei teased Chen Guang, who was in front of the other gamers. Though she hadn't received professional training, she was flexible due to her love of sports. Moreover, she had been nourished by Chen Guang in the outside world. Now that she was a level A gamer, it wasn't difficult for her to imitate the diving maneuvers. Don't be careless. I don't think it's that simple, Chu Zijin reminded solemnly. Chu Zijin reminded him with a solemn expression. As she spoke, she did a 720-degree turn in the air before spinning in a circle. Technique points 10. 0. Art points 10. 0. Congratulations to Peasant for obtaining the perfect maneuver bonus, 10 reward points. Peasant raised his eyebrows and said, "Yeah, I got 2 10 zeros. I got 10 reward points for nothing." Chen Guang and Lu Fei turned their heads to look at her. With Peasant's petite frame and her amazing coordination and flexibility, her maneuvers were at the standard of an Olympic gold medalist. In comparison, Chen Guang, who was more than 185 meters tall, looked stiff. However, Chen Guang didn't really care. This was just the beginning. At least it was better than the first Protoss, whose pants were too long and hung on the floating island. Speaking of which, it was strange. The Protoss had clearly died far away from him, but Chen Guang's heart had sensed it the moment the obliteration barrier swept past him. He felt that there was a layer of energy in the independent green in the glass world. The obliteration barrier should have shattered the god into the most basic ions in an instant. At the same time, it should have disintegrated his divine power into the most primitive energy. Then the god should have completely ceased to exist. Why did the green in the glass world seem to have been stuffed with something new? Chen Guang was puzzled. As he followed the gift that popped up in his head, he pondered in his heart. At the same time, he spread out his mental strength slightly to investigate the characteristics of this additional rule-bending energy. Not long after, he came to a sudden realization. If he remembered correctly, this seemed to be very similar to the mysterious energy that appeared in his body after he absorbed the power of the dead Protoss, after fighting against the giant mosquito array in the slaughtering world, and then bursting out a colorful fart. Based on the distribution of human players, there were close to 10 million players in this small mission world, so there should be around 150,000 similar mission spaces in the Jump Off the Building Cup in-world mission spaces. There was an unlucky Gui Shun in his mission space. There were 150,000 mission spaces in total, so there must be other Gui Shun races that were unlucky. Then after this mission, how many Protoss would be obliterated? And the barrier would collapse and turn into this strange energy that was left in the world in the cup? With this question in mind, Chen Guang landed on the next floating island. He jumped first, and of course he landed first. When he landed, he received a notification that as a warrior who successfully landed, he received an additional reward of 10 bonus points. During the entire process, each person performed at least 5 to 6 sets of actions, so he didn't receive the most bonus points. Between the two grade A gamers, Peasant and Lu Fei, Peasant had a total of 6 perfect scores, and Lu Fei had 4. Chen Guang felt that it was unfair and not okay. The rating system was very strict. It was too much to ask a man like him to perform the actions of a female diver. Forget it. I'll just adjust my breathing and continue jumping. He had a new discovery. The gravity coefficient in this mission space seemed to be different from that of the outside world. It was not as much as 1g. At most, it was only 0.2g. As a result, although the two floating islands seemed to be far away from each other, the impact when they landed was not that exaggerated. Apart from this, when he was about to land, he could clearly feel a rather gentle cushioning force coming from the world in the cup, further slowing down his momentum. This was normal. Otherwise, falling from such a height, even if it was only 0.2g, an E-rank player would still die without a burial site. Alright, if there's nothing else, let's rest for a while before continuing our jump. Chen Guang peeked out from the edge and saw that the floating island was only 10 meters away from him. It was very close. However, he felt that it was quite dangerous because the island below was too small. It was less than 5 meters by 5 meters in radius. That meant that even though the distance was close, he might accidentally jump askew. As he was thinking, he heard a heart-wrenching scream from the side. It was an unlucky guy who jumped askew. The poor guy waved his hands and feet as he fell further and further away. He became smaller and smaller, and he disappeared into the abyss below. Chen Guang mourned for him silently. He didn't know what would happen to him after he died, but his scream was too pitiful. Be careful. The gravity might change again if you jump down from here. Don't use too much force. If you notice something wrong in the air, you can adjust your posture or think of other ways to adjust your landing point. Lu Fei said, "All right, you have the final say. I have an idea. First, jump on the spot and feel the gravity. Then jump." "That's great." Lu Fei even used her rubber ability to pull Chen Guang off the second floating island, and then bounced back. This time, the three of them didn't rush to the front. Instead, they jumped at about the first 20 places. However, the people who jumped first were in tragedy. They thought it was the previous 0.2G and jumped lightly. The result was that they screamed and fell straight into the abyss. The smarter ones steadied themselves. They first observed the situation of others, focusing on Chen Guang and the other two. They observed the momentum of the three of them when they jumped, and then used their strength. With a loud rumbling sound, Chen Guang and the other two landed on the third floating island in the order of 7, 8, 9. This time, although the three of them didn't get the first drop reward, Chen Guang got a perfect score. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei also got a perfect score. The reason was simple. The distance was too close, the gravity was too strong, and the falling speed was too fast. It was only enough for them to do a set of 3-meter board diving. As soon as the three of them landed, they quickly put their attention on the top of their heads. They moved to the inner side and tested the gravity at an extremely fast speed before continuing to jump. The third floating island was too small. If they didn't leave now, they might be smashed by the people falling from above. Before jumping, the three of them turned to look at their sides. Miserable, truly miserable. Whether it was the human players who landed first or later, they were all miserable. The top C-rank experts were barely able to stand, while the D-rank players were sprawled on the ground. As for the E-rank players, they were in a miserable state. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Those who were lucky were hanging on by a thread, and hurriedly used their reward points to prolong their lives. As for those who were unlucky enough to have their heads hit the ground, then sorry about that. As soon as Chen Guang and the other two moved, the Protoss players landed in the place where the three of them had just stood. These Protoss players looked at the miserable state of the human players around them and laughed. "Lord 8 Directions, I don't think we need to do anything at all. These mortals will die by themselves." The 8 Directions Emperor frowned. "Cut the crap. Didn't you see that someone jumped before us? Not only that, but the third floating island also exposed many problems. According to the original judgment of the 8 Directions Emperor, even if there was a suitable buffer before landing, these mortals should have all died on the third floating island. But the result was that these seemingly fragile humans were able to quickly find the most perfect way to land at the moment of life and death, controlling the damage to the minimum. Even if the so-called minimum damage seemed very tragic, in this mission space, as long as one's life was saved, they could use a variety of items that could be exchanged in the shop to recover to their original state. How could the vitality of these ants be so tenacious? Don't delay, keep going. Gathering their thoughts, the 8 Directions Emperor urged again. Don't let your guard down. Including the 2 idiots who just fell into the abyss, we have already lost a total of 3 members. That being said, there were still 2 or 3 unscrupulous Protoss players who deliberately stood in place before jumping, blocking the human players who fell from above, raising their hands and punching them into the abyss. The 8 Directions Emperor was not happy to see this, but he did not say anything. There was another change in the jump from the third floating island to the fourth floating island. The fourth floating island did not stay in place, but moved left and right. However, this was not a problem for the Super S-level Chen Guang and the 2 level A girls. Although the 3 of them could not fly, when they realized that something was wrong in midair, Chun Guang used the Earth Exploder's arcana to create rocks under his feet. He kicked on them to change the direction of their flight, and the three of them landed on the fourth floating island. The few ordinary players following closely behind the three of them were also quick-witted. They used all sorts of methods to deal with the situation. Some of them had no other choice but to purchase a hang glider from the system shop while they were still in mid-air. Although this kind of action was given a score of 0, at least they would not jump crookedly. When Chun Guang saw this, he could not help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. This person's potential was really scary. Behind them, the mini Protoss players led by the 8 Directions Emperor followed suit, and they also used all kinds of tricks. The 8 Directions Divine Emperors thought that they were worthy of being the natives of the original plane. These seemingly weak ants were far ahead of the divine race in terms of flexibility. Not only that, but the E-class human players who survived on the third floating island also made a prompt decision to spend all the reward points in their pockets on strengthening their bodies. Otherwise, they would use up all the inventory items that could enhance their physique in one go. Quiet Angel, spread your wings and fly down later. It's time to exert your strength. The 8 Directions Emperor thought for a moment, then said to the people behind him without looking back. Behind him, a person in white who looked like a man or a woman made a sound. His body surged with a strange light, and he suddenly accelerated his descent. It was not that this Protoss could forcibly accelerate against gravity, but countless feather-shaped energy appeared all over his body. These feathers were smooth and had no friction at all. They could even accelerate downward with the help of the airflow in the mission space. Quiet Angel stared straight at the back of the mortal players who were getting closer and closer. Her eyes flashed with determination. In terms of combat power, I, Quiet Angel, am indeed very weak, but this mission space is simply tailor-made for me. I never thought that I, who could be said to be a tragedy in the celestial realm, would have a day where I could make a comeback. As long as I can seize the throne of first place in this mission, when I return to the celestial realm, I can truly receive the protection of the 8 Directions Emperor, right? Chapter 1252. Although Quiet Angel was a Protoss, his fate was tragic. Since the day he was born, Quiet Angel had become a plaything for many powerful beings in the divine realm because of his handsome appearance. Ordinary handsomeness naturally could not enter the eyes of the gods, but Quiet Angel was one of the great angel clans in the divine realm. He was extremely beautiful. That was not all. Quiet Angel was a perfect holy angel that only appeared once in a billion years. His beauty was almost beyond the realm, and no one below the God Emperor could resist him. That was not all. His perfect holy angel body had other drawbacks. His combat power was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Even if he trained hard, he could only make his appearance more and more handsome without any improvement in his combat power. The results of his training were all uncontrollably reflected on his face. Even if the perfect holy angel body could change his appearance at will, his handsomeness did not diminish no matter how he or she changed. A man's wealth was his own ruin. The silent angel had a stunning appearance, but she didn't have the ability to defend herself. As a result, the pitiful silent angel had become the laughingstock of the divine realm. She had even caused several small-scale wars because of her. Although those wars could not enter the eyes of top existences like the God Emperors and God Emperors, they caused quite a stir among the ultimate gods. In the end, Quiet Angel changed hands several times and fell into the hands of the Divine Desire. He was often sent out by the Divine Desire to carry out various diplomatic activities. Originally, Quiet Angel thought that his fate would be an eternal tragedy without any hope, but this game gave him a new chance. In the game space, his appearance had changed. He was no longer as handsome as before. He was still weak, but he no longer attracted attention. In addition, Quiet Angel had joined the 8 God Emperors from the very beginning. Although he was still in the lowest level sea realm among the Protoss, the talent of the Angel clan had given him a unique advantage, a pair of wings. In addition, he finally had a clear gender and was no longer as indiscriminate as before. Unlike other Protoss who regarded this game as a mission imposed by the divine realm's origin, Quiet Angel was simply intoxicated. No matter what, I must firmly grasp this opportunity. I'm definitely going to get the first place in this game mission. The Silent Angel flapped his wings and performed a rather graceful backflip in the air. His downward momentum abruptly accelerated, while the frequency of his movements in the air also increased. Although Lu Fei and Chu Zijin were rather agile and good at all kinds of actions, they were far inferior to Silent Angel, the master of diplomacy who had experienced countless tragedies in the divine realm, and was known as the #1 social butterfly in the endless divine realm. This fellow dived straight down like a butterfly through flowers. At the same time, his body flashed and moved at an extremely fast speed. It was as if he was performing 3 sets of diving moves in a second. With a whooshing sound, he surpassed everyone and descended at an extremely fast speed. Chen Guang could only stare blankly. This bro probably practiced gymnastics in the endless god realm, right? Silent Angel, who was riding at the top of the pack, vaguely heard Chen Guang's complaints, but joy appeared on her face. Brother, it's been so many years, and even in the vast god realm, no one has ever called me brother, but this mortal actually. He recognizes my gender. Friend, although we're on opposing sides, it doesn't matter. Although I'm only a C rank now, after this mission space, I'll definitely be recognized by the 8 great emperors. Becoming a stronger B rank, or even A rank expert is just around the corner. If I'm lucky enough to meet you again, I'll protect you. Although Silent Angel is charging at the front, we can't let our guard down. The entire mission might not only be based on the first place, but also on everyone else. Let's speed up. Following the order of the 8 great emperors, the Protoss players finally ended their probing process and began to learn from Silent Angel's method of speeding down. Seeing this, Chen Guang's group of 3, who had been descending slowly, did not dare to be careless. Let's increase our speed appropriately, but make sure to act within your means, Chu Zijin said. I feel that you don't have to make do with just the 2 of us. This game mission doesn't seem to have any possibility of killing each other. You don't have to worry about our safety at all. Go do your own thing. Luffy nodded in agreement. That's right. Besides, the 2 of us are A rank. Even if the Protoss wants to go against us, they'll have to carefully consider whether they have the ability to do so. Chen Guang turned his head to look at the 8 great emperors who were passing by him and said, That's fine too, but you guys have to pay attention to that purple-clothed youth over there. He's an S-rank Protoss player. As for the other Protoss, there's nothing to fear. Alright, got it. Hurry up and go. Luffy urged impatiently. This was not the time for romance. Chen Guang carefully checked the strength of the Protoss team again. After confirming that the other 3 A-rank Protoss were weaker than Luffy and Chu Zijin in terms of strength, he boldly sped up and passed through the crowd. As long as he kept an eye on the 8 great emperors, who posed the greatest threat to the 2 women, he really did not have to worry about their safety. Compared to the graceful posture of Silent Angel, when Chen Guang sped up, his movements did not look as elegant. He was like a tumbling cannonball. The first group, represented by Silent Angel, the 8 great emperors and Chen Guang, landed on the 5th island one after another. There was something strange about the 5th island. It was not a complete flat structure, but a crystal tower in the shape of a pointed cone. It looked beautiful, but in fact there were hidden dangers. For example, when jumping down, one might accidentally poke one's but on the crystal tower's pointed cone. Otherwise, when landing on the edge of the crystal tower, one might not even have the time to stand on one's feet before sliding down. Even Chen Guang almost slipped when falling. Fortunately, he reacted in time and used his hands to act as suction cups. He stuck to the wall all the way and barely stopped at the edge of the crystal tower. With the situation on the 5th island, he could no longer test the gravity like before. As for the other players, most of the human players were lagging behind. Even Chu Zijin and Lu Fei had just jumped from the 4th island. Most of the others were still on the 3rd island, or on the way to the 4th island from the 3rd island. As for the obliteration barrier, players who were on the way from the 2nd island to the 3rd island had already been disintegrated. As for those who had been jumping down, there was no need to panic for the time being. Silent Angel's landing posture was much better than Chen Guang's. She spread her wings and slowly descended, then paused for a moment to clearly see the position of the island below through the translucent crystal tower. Then, she flapped her wings and continued on her way. The 8 great emperors landed almost at the same time as Chen Guang, but their posture was much more elegant. After all, he was a noble celestial. Even if he had to exhaust more divine power, he could not let himself be as inelegant as a mortal. After a short rest, the 8 great emperors looked curiously at Chen Guang, then snorted coldly and continued to jump down. Chen Guang was not in a hurry. Instead, he turned his head to look at the crystal tower beside him. Foolish celestials, what do you know? According to the old man's many years of experience in online games, the other places were islands, but there was a crystal tower here. It was either a save point or something else. Not only did Chen Guang not jump down, but he also climbed up along the edge of the crystal tower. The triangular crystal tower looked somewhat familiar. It looked like a pyramid, and every angle was a perfect golden curve. When Chen Guang reached the center of the crystal tower, at an extremely fast speed, the majority of the players finally caught up with his pace. Among them were 2 celestial players who deliberately stayed behind. Haha, what is this idiot doing? Strange, what is his purpose? What purpose could he have? Of course he is stupid. Not every player can be like us, and always maintain a strong heart. He is just a mortal, and mortals have weaknesses. He has probably broken down and given up. The 2 celestials looked at Chen Guang and laughed, but Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who had just landed, did not think so. Lu Fei looked up and down at Chen Guang. This guy is full of bad ideas. He must have found something. Chu Zijin did not answer her immediately. Instead, she imitated Chen Guang and looked around the triangular crystal tower. About half a minute later, Chu Zijin suddenly said loudly, "Sister Lu Fei, quickly go to the left." "I'll go to the right." "What's wrong?" Lu Fei looked puzzled. Chu Zijin looked carefully at the 2 of them, then lowered her voice and said, "Sister Lu Fei, look at our feet." Lu Fei looked down and saw countless equilateral triangles about 15 centimeters long under her feet. And then, this crystal tower is made up of countless perfect equilateral triangles. Look at these triangular crystals. As Chu Zijin said, she bent down to touch the crystal and continued, "You know that my ability is to control time, right? But I feel a power similar to time in these triangular crystals. It's the power of space." Seeing that Lu Fei was still puzzled, Chu Zijin said in a lower voice. Lu Fei finally understood. "You mean?" Chu Zijin nodded. "Yes, it must be like this. Chen Guang must have found out that this 5th island is a crystal tower. There must be a teleportation array. I can find out because of the resonance of time and space, but he doesn't have the time ability. I really don't know how he did it. Well, let's hurry up while the others haven't found out." After saying that, the 2 immediately split up and went to the other side of the crystal tower. Chen Guang, who had just walked to the center of the equilateral triangle, also saw the 2 women's actions. He could not help but scratch his head. They also found out. But Sister Lu Fei is also a gamer, so it's only right. As he muttered, Chen Guang jumped forward, his right foot stepping on the most central triangle of the crystal tower. A circle of light flashed, and at the same time, the electronic voice of the Holy Grail sounded in his mind. Congratulations to player Chen Guang for discovering the teleportation array, directly arriving at the 10th floating island. Remaining number of uses of the teleportation array, 0. On the other side, Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who were running to the edge, saw Chen Guang's figure disappear. They immediately broke into a run at an even faster speed. As for the 2 Protoss who were laughing at Chen Guang, they were dumbfounded. There's such a thing. Is this cheating? No, this should be the rules of the game mission. Damn humans, you only know how to exploit loopholes. The 2 B-class Protoss cursed as they quickly rushed to the place where Chen Guang disappeared. Of course they missed. Although they also found the teleportation array, it could only be used once, and Chen Guang had already used it. No, this crystal tower has a total of 4 sides. The 2 Protoss did not dare to delay. They split up and rushed to the other 2 sides but still missed. they saw Chu Zijin and Lu Fei's figures disappear. Chapter 1253. What the hell? How can something like this happen? The two Protoss stomped their feet in different places and rushed toward the fourth side of the rhombus-shaped crystal tower. In the end, they still missed. The two Protoss poked their heads out from both sides at the same time, only to see a mortal player falling from the sky and landing on the triangle in the middle. Then, the player looked around blankly, and his figure quickly faded away. F*CK. There's a teleportation circle. Awesome. Just as he was about to disappear, the player finally recovered from the shock and cried out in surprise. The two Protoss were on the verge of collapse. What the F*CK? The two Protoss could only blame their bad luck. Originally, they could at least grab the fourth teleportation circle and send at least one person up. In the end, who would have thought that someone with a triangular wing would fall from the sky and land in this place? On the other side, Chen Guang's figure slowly appeared, and then he only felt a terrifying wave of heat hitting him in the face. He looked around and found that he was almost in a sea of fire. He was standing on a rock that had been burned red. This rock was surrounded by magma, and the magma sea that covered an area of about 1 kilometer was densely dotted with many rocky islands. Chen Guang was shocked in his heart. The 10th island was truly formidable. It looked like anyone who jumped down from it would fall into the magma if they weren't careful. Since he was directly transported over, he managed to avoid the most dangerous landing process. But how could he get to the next island? He looked around and found that he was at least 100 meters away from the edge of the magma sea. In this jumping world, due to the restrictions of the rules, he could not fly. It was useless even if he crazily transferred his power to his feet. Did this mean that he could only walk on the magma to get to the 10th island? While he was thinking, two rocky islands not far from him lit up almost at the same time. Sure enough, Lu Fei and Chu Zijin appeared at the same time. Chen Guang gave the two a thumbs up, and then the three of them looked at each other, thinking about how to get out of this magma sea. Don't panic, let me test the temperature first. As a real man, Chen Guang was the first to take a step forward. He gathered his inner strength into his feet and lifted his leg, stepping on the magma. With a sizzling sound, the casual shoes on his feet were burned through on the spot. However, his cultivation was tyrannical, so he forcibly blocked the heat and continued to burn inside. Although it was still very hot, walking a few steps was not a problem. Chen Guang was about to warn the other two when he heard a rumbling sound. He looked back and saw Chu Zijin and Lu Fei sitting on a strange black machine almost at the same time. It looked a bit like a motorboat, but it could run on magma. The two girls sped all the way, leaving two trails of crimson flames in their wake. They managed to bypass Chen Guang and went straight to the edge of the magma sea. You guys are? Chu Zijin joked. Really, why are you in such a hurry? The mall gave us a corresponding prop. This motorboat is called Magma Runner, and it is for us to run on magma. Lu Fei also laughed. Yes, it's really useful, but it's a little expensive. It costs 100 points. Chen Guang was really speechless for a long time. This jumping off the building was too playful. However, he was stubborn. How could he admit his failure? He put his hands on his hips. Only the weak need to use this kind of tool. A strong person like me doesn't need these external things at all. Yanbai walked forward with his head held high and his chest puffed out. Every time he landed on the ground, there would be a creaking sound. Needless to say, the inner strength insole was quite useful. Although the temperature was still a little high after a long time, it felt like roasted duck feet on charcoal. However, with the help of his innate ability, it could quickly recover to its original state. The two girls knew his nature, so they no longer provoked him. They just grinned and rode the motorboat straight ahead. The three of them ran to the edge of the magma sea almost at the same time. There was a huge rock hanging out of the magma sea. Looking from here to both sides, they could see the magma pouring down like a waterfall, falling straight down. But it didn't fall far before the magma disappeared abruptly, as if there was an invisible basin below to catch it. About 300 meters down from here was the 11th island, which was actually a snow-covered snowfield. On the snowfield, There were countless glittering icicles. It's actually ice and fire. Let's try the gravity first. Chu Zijin almost spilled the beans. President Chu doesn't seem to be very pure. Lu Fei, who was next to her, immediately caught her sore spot. How can that be? I don't even know what it means. Don't pretend. Pure people look pure. And they won't just say half of the words. You know the meaning in your heart, so you stopped halfway. On the other side, Chen Guang suddenly waved his hand with a serious expression. Be serious, everyone. The gravity of the 10th island is strange. Just that light jump of his just now had brought him to a height of less than 2 meters, but he had felt at least 3 changes in gravity. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei hurriedly collected their thoughts and imitated him. Sure enough. At the moment of taking off, I felt a huge force, at least 3 times the surface gravity. But when I reached the middle of the jump, it suddenly became very light, only about 1/20th of the surface gravity. The moment I reached the top, I felt like I was slammed to the ground by a huge force. This is close to 10 times the surface gravity. Chu Zijin analyzed it clearly. Lu Fei nodded. This means that the process of jumping from here to the ice island must have the same changes in gravity. Then it will be very difficult to completely follow the gift's instructions. In addition, if the frequency of the supergravity is too high, the force when landing will be very terrifying. The 3 of us can barely withstand it, but I'm afraid that E-rank players won't be able to escape. The discussion between the 3 of them was in full swing. After all, the fastest Protoss above them had probably only reached the 6th island. There was no need to be anxious. Sharpening the axe would not delay the work of cutting firewood. Guys, is the 10th island really that powerful? As they were chatting, a timid voice suddenly came from behind them. The 3 of them were shocked. Turning around, they saw a young man standing behind them. Chen Guang's hair stood on end. With his abilities, someone could actually sneak up behind him? Chen Guang looked at him with a guarded expression. You must be a monster. How did you sneak over here? The young man was at a loss. I don't know why either. Just now, when I jumped to the 5th island, I didn't understand what happened. Then I said I found a teleportation array. When I came to my senses, I was already standing here. Chen Guang suddenly understood. It was not strange that he had been teleported here. Speaking of which, this guy's luck was too good. Not only had he landed on the teleportation array, he had even managed to avoid the magma sea after reaching the 10th island. His luck was at least S rank. That's right. I have high hopes for you. With your luck, you will definitely become a great person in the future. Alright, young man, you can do it. We will go down first. After saying that, Chen Guang jumped down first. The fluctuating gravity was very scary, but he could not give up just because it was difficult. Lu Fei and Chu Zijin also followed closely behind. This guy with S-rank luck first considered for a few seconds. Then he clenched his teeth and upgraded to D rank on the spot. Then he closed his eyes and jumped down like Chen Guang and the other 2. Chen Guang and the other 2, who were flying in the air, could only watch as this guy howled miserably as he was swept down by the wildly fluctuating gravity. It turned out that halfway from the 10th island to the 11th island, not only would there be changes in the angle of gravity, but there would also be differences in the vertical position. This guy with S-rank luck seemed to have used up all his luck just now. When he jumped down, he encountered a gravitational whirlpool. He was howling miserably. That poisonous milk of yours just now really hurt him. Lu Fei chuckled and teased. Chen Guang could only express his heartache. How can this be called poisonous milk? Luck is also a part of one's strength. I really have high hopes for this guy. Although he is only E rank, the rewards in this jumping off building world are very generous. It should not be a problem for him to rise to D rank. If he thinks of something, he should be able to land on the 11th island smoothly. This is a very professional judgment of mine. Alright. You're a professional, but now he's dead. If he's dead, then so be it. Hopefully, he will still have a chance to prove himself after being reset. At this time, the Protoss who were lagging behind were also at a loss. Silent Angel, who had rushed to the front, thought that he had already left everyone in the dust. As the first contestant in the lead, He had received a notification from the Cup World. However, he did not expect that he would fall behind for no reason. It was simply unreasonable. Chen Guang and the other two used the teleportation formation that could be considered a bug and instantly overtook everyone else. They no longer held back and increased their speed as they went down layer by layer. During this period, the three of them had used various techniques to find the mechanisms of different floating islands, such as teleportation formations, acceleration umbrellas, and various other strange tools. After passing through the 30th island, the difficulty of the mission continued to increase. Not only did all the floating islands become mobile, but the gravitational conditions became even more extreme. In addition, when the players were flying, various projection walls would continuously appear, requiring the players to completely follow the posture of the projection when flying over a certain surface. Otherwise, they would directly crash into the projection. Chen Guang had even personally tested the strength of the projection walls. If one did not have a physical body realm of a rank or above, they would instantly shatter into pieces if they crashed into it. These various situations caused the elimination rate of the players to increase sharply. However, the good thing was that the rewards were generous. Performing a perfect move would earn them 10 reward points, which was even more than many players who had participated several times in the past. Of course, performing a perfect move was very difficult for E-rank players. However, there would always be people who were extremely lucky or had heaven-defying talent. They would always be able to perform a perfect move once. Otherwise, they would be like the young man that Chen Guang and the other two had encountered, who had run into the teleportation formation. When Chen Guang and the other two stopped on the 50th island, the fastest players behind them had only reached the 40th island. However, there were no E-rank players who had survived until now. All the players had completed the process of advancing from E-rank to D-rank. Chapter 1254. At this time, Chen Guang was on the 50th island, but his face was full of confusion. He realized that he was wrong. At first, he thought that this jump off the building was in the shape of a standard straight tube, with a diameter of 10 kilometers from top to bottom. Jumping down from above, along the way were all small floating islands, the largest of which was no more than 2 kilometers in diameter. The edge of the floating island abyss in the distance could also be clearly seen with the naked eye. But when the three of them jumped onto the 50th island, everything changed. Moreover, this change came without warning, without any buffer in between. The moment he landed, he realized that the 50th island was completely different from the floating island before. Chen Guang was at a loss, and Chu Zijin and Lu Fei were not much better. Lu Fei was like Granny Lu, who had accidentally barged into the Grand View Garden, standing beside Chen Guang and looking around from top to bottom. What is this place? Why did it suddenly become so big, so spacious and bright? Chu Zijin frowned. How is this an island? This is clearly a boundless continent. If this is the case, how can we reach the edge before the obliteration barrier descends? Lu Fei also realized this problem. No, little Chu, look at the edge of the glass barrier in the distance. This continent has no edge at all, right? The two girls looked up into the distance. Only God knew how far the transparent wall at the edge was. It was almost beyond the limits of their vision and distance, but they could still see it. There was only one explanation for this. This transparent wall was too tall. So tall that it was beyond the comprehension of others. Looking at it from afar, it even gave people the feeling that it was like a starry sky. Chu Zijin closed her eyes, and a sparkling and transparent crystal hourglass appeared in her palm. She activated her A-rank time ability. After a long time, she said, the light reflected from the distant glass wall took at least more than 30 seconds to reach us. This means that the size of this continent is definitely more than 10 million kilometers. Lu Fei said in surprise, your time ability can also be used to measure distance? Chu Zijin sighed. Of course not. After all, who would use the speed of light to measure distance? It's just that this transparent wall is too far away from us. So much so that I can even capture the time revealed by the light. If it's so far away, it's impossible for us to jump down before the obliteration barrier arrives. Lu Fei also sighed, then looked up and exclaimed, strange, the sky that looked like a starry sky is gone. Chu Zijin replied, that seems to be the case. In other words, this 50th island is an independent plane? The memories of being players gradually surfaced in their minds, and Chu Zijin and Lu Fei slowly adapted to the concept of planes. Lu Fei suddenly thought of something. Right, why hasn't this kid said anything yet? Is he pretending to be deep? Even if the two of us spend half a year guessing here, we might not even be as good as one word from this fellow. The two of them turned to look at Chen Guang at the same time, only to see that he was very agitated. Chen Guang sighed. You're right. This place has indeed become a world of its own. We probably don't have to worry about the barrier, because this place can be understood as the middle station of the entire jumping world. We should be able to rest here for a while. From your tone, it seems like you're very familiar with this place. Lu Fei, who knew Chen Guang very well, immediately discovered the abnormality in his tone. Chen Guang nodded helplessly. That's quite familiar. Chen Guang stood side by side with the two women on a boulder at the summit of the mountain. He gazed into the distance, in the direction of the transparent wall that Lu Fei and Chu Zijin had mentioned. The mountains, rivers, and veins of the earth were extending upwards in a very orderly manner. This unique tilted landscape, this world of tilted slabs, where one couldn't see the edge from the bottom to the top. How could he not be familiar with this place? In any case, he had lived here for more than 100,000 years. Even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't have thought that he would return to the realm of true martial in such a way. This had happened too suddenly, and he had been completely unprepared. So here came the problem. He had jumped off the building and jumped into the realm of true martial. However, now wasn't the time to catch up with his old acquaintances on this continent. There were at least dozens of people chasing after him, and they wanted to rush to the front. In addition, Chen Guang had lived a long life in the realm of true martial. His old acquaintances from the time he had first arrived here had already turned into bones. Only God knew how many times they had reincarnated. So, even if he stood in front of them again, he might not recognize them. In addition, Chen Guang had become a martial sage in the realm of true martial. He was known as the realm of true martial holy emperor. His position was even higher. He could decide the life and death of hundreds of millions of people with just a word. So, he didn't have many friends that he could talk to. Hey, the task prompt has come. It says that this place is called True Martial Island. It asks us to find a place called True Martial Holy Emperor City on this island. Then we can get the approval of the residents of True Martial Holy Emperor City. Then, we can enter the former residence of the Holy Emperor City's city lord. There is an old well in the former residence. We can jump from the old well and enter the next island. Oh, by the way, it says that there are a total of 9 True Martial Holy Emperor cities on True Martial Island. They are located at different heights. If we can jump from the highest True Martial Holy Emperor City, we can directly jump over the 9 floating islands and land on the 59th island. Chen Guang was about to say that this was the realm of True Martial. However, he didn't expect that the task prompt would appear in the form of a task card in the minds of the 3 people. He also covered his face. Forget it. My poor realm of True Martial has been forcibly demoted to realm of True Martial. Is your family a diehouse owner? Are you a cosmic gigantism sufferer? Have you ever seen such a big island? Besides, isn't realm of True Martial Holy Emperor City the home of the old man? There is a small line of words at the bottom of the task prompt. It says that the residents of realm of True Martial Holy Emperor City are very strong. The weakest of them is a C rank. The city guards even have A rank strength. The 13 captains of the city guards have terrifying S rank strength. The Lord is S rank. This is only the middle level of realm of True Martial Holy Emperor City. If it is the 9th level of Saint Emperor City, the ordinary residents have A rank strength. The stronger ones have S rank strength, or even beyond S rank strength. Chu Zijin cried out in alarm again. Chen Guang clenched his fists slightly. He felt the vast internal strength in his body growing crazily, because of the continuous absorption of yin and yang qi. This was the reason. Considering the strength of the natives of the realm of True Martial, Saying that they were S rank would be underestimating the captains. When he was still in the realm of True Martial, the realm of True Martial was built on the 9th level of Saint Emperor City. His deputies were all martial emperors. The stronger members of the city guards were all martial emperors. Although the classification of abilities in the Jinwu continent was somewhat different from that of the players in the game, it wasn't wrong to call them Super S rank. For example, now that he had recovered all his strength, if he returned to the martial sage realm, he would be a super S class. Lu Fei felt uneasy and said, "Why don't we choose a Saint Emperor city that's in the middle? But this place is so big, how are we going to find him? With our current abilities, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for us to obtain the approval of the natives here. Right?" Chen Guang waved his hand casually. "No, I know the way. Follow me. We'll go straight to the 9th floor, the strongest true martial Holy Emperor city. Why don't we split up? I'm afraid we'll slow you down." Chu Zijin hesitated. However, Chen Guang laughed out loud. With a wave of his hand, a burst of energy shot out from his palm and flew straight towards the forest at the bottom of the 300-meter cliff. Following the loud explosion, under the dumbfounded gazes of Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, the forest below was forcefully razed to the ground. After the trees fell, the bare ground extended outwards, forming an empty space that was more than 500 meters wide and more than 10 kilometers long. "Are you on drugs?" Lu Fei exclaimed. She had always known that Chen Guang was powerful, but this was way too powerful. Was this still a palm from a human? Did you just shoot out a directional neutron cannon with a single slap? Chen Guang waved his hand proudly. "Don't panic. I've already said that this is my territory. The me on True Martial Island is the real me. I forgot to tell you that True Martial Holy Emperor City was built by me. Me is True Martial Holy Emperor. Therefore we can boldly walk into True Martial Holy Emperor City. No one will say anything." Chu Zijin and Lu Fei stared at him. They felt that he was bragging, but he was not that kind of person. "Why are you looking at me like that? I'm serious. Are you sure that the people inside know you? Do they know who you are now?" Chen Guang was stunned at first, but then he waved his hand indifferently. When one's strength reaches a certain level, appearance is irrelevant. What matters is strength. After all, there has only been one martial sage on this huge true martial island. It's not anyone else, it's me. Alright, you win. You can be cocky. Let's go. Hurry up. Luffy gave him a push from behind, and the three of them set off just like that. Chen Guang wasn't worried about the fact that he was gone. It didn't matter how many years he had been gone, or how many batches of people had changed in the true martial Holy Emperor City. As long as he was still a martial sage, he would naturally be the master of the true martial Holy Emperor City. Not long after arriving here, he had recovered 50% of his strength. Although the recovery would slow down as his strength increased, it would not be a problem, as long as he was sure that he could recover to his peak state. However, there was one thing he did not understand. Millions of human players had arrived in 150,000 different mission spaces. They could not duplicate 150,000 true martial islands at once, could they? The Heavenly Holy Grail did not have the power to do so. However, it did not take long for him to get the answer to his question. This was because the three of them encountered other players as they hurried on their way. The fastest player in this mission space had only reached about 30 islands. Of course, the three of them could only encounter other players in other mission spaces. This meant that regardless of which mission space they were in, the moment they landed on True Martial Island, all the players were suddenly pulled to the same big map. This was a team of 4 Protoss. They were all elites and all of them were God Emperors. Although there weren't any super experts like Ba Fong or Yu Ting among the 5 God Emperors, the formation of 5 God Emperors was still rather exaggerated. That was why they were able to catch up to Chen Guang's trio. Previously at the Crystal Tower, these 4 gods must have snatched the rights to use all the teleportation portals. In addition, they seemed to be very unfriendly to human players. Chapter 1255. The Peach Blossom Divine Emperor. Also known as Peach Blossom, was a fairy born from the blooming nightmare peach blossom, and belonged to the fairy race. However, because of the nightmare peach blossom's innate ability, Peach Blossom had some characteristics of the plant race. She was the only female among the 4 divine emperors. She had a charming posture, radiant cheeks, and a pair of seductive peach blossom eyes. In terms of strength, the Peach Blossom Divine Emperor did not rank high in the endless divine realm. However, in terms of appearance, Peach Blossom could be said to be the best in the endless divine realm. Even the gods could easily fall for her peach blossom dress. Only the main gods who wholeheartedly pursued greater power, transcended the ordinary rules, reached the origin of the rules, and fused half of their bodies and half of their divine souls into the boundless god realm, could completely ignore her charms. Different from divine emperors, once a overgod became a overgod. Although they would possess power that surpassed the gods, their original character would be affected by too much power. Regardless of whether this overgod was arrogant or humble, irritable or stubborn before becoming a overgod, they would become transcendent after becoming a overgod. That's right, it was incomparably transcendent. Most of their lives, they would actively fuse their bodies and souls into the endless divine realm, allowing themselves to become a part of the endless divine realm. At the same time, they would also be closer to the origin of the endless divine realm. This transcendent came from the desire for power, and this desire came from the instincts of the souls of all living beings in the endless divine realm. No matter what kind of life, as long as they had intelligence, or even their own consciousness, they could not escape from this instinct. This was also the fundamental reason why the relationship between Colored and her father, the overgod of chaos, was so cold. Otherwise, the overgod of chaos would not have been unaware that Colored had fallen into the heavenly Holy Grail for so many years. If the will of the overgod of chaos was to be touched, it would probably only be when Colored died. Only then could it cause a slight ripple in the will of the overgod of chaos. As for why Peach Blossom had so many fans in the immortal realm, her beautiful appearance was only the surface reason. The deeper reason was that her appearance had already reached a level close to the rules. Getting close to her, looking at her at such a close distance, could even unconsciously obtain greater power. She had many fans in the endless god realm, and the 3 god emperors around her were the best of the best. They were Wind Shadow, Frost, and Green Wood. These 4 gods were originally gathered together in the endless divine realm, and could be considered as a major force that dominated an area. After accumulating their strength a few times before this mission, the 4 gods simply looted 4 party contracts before entering the mission space, and immediately formed a party. When the game mission had just begun, the 4 gods had already massacred all the human players in their respective missions. However, even though there were no more competitors, the 4 gods had set their sights on the champion seat of the 150,000 mission spaces from the very beginning. They rushed down without stopping, and even found one more mechanism than Chen Guang, and the other 2, arriving before Chen Guang, and the other 2. Peach, it seems I was right. Since Marshall Island is so large, it's very likely that all the players are gathered here. These 3 people came from another quest space, Shifeng said. Frost God Emperor stood at the intersection, his body covered in frost. Even his eyebrows were completely frozen, and he said expressionlessly. As he spoke, his eyes were fixed on Peach's face, but everyone knew that he was talking about Chen Guang and the other 2. 3 humans. Not bad but useless. It was the same for Wind Shadow Deity Emperor, who had his arms crossed. As for Green Wood, who had a head full of green hair and long eyebrows that looked like ancient vines that dragged down from his cheeks, he did not say a word. He only stared coldly at Chen Guang and the other 2. As he breathed, the trees on both sides of the road swayed as if they were breathing. At this time, there was an endless forest beside the road. Among the 4 gods, Greenwood was the strongest. Peach frowned and glanced at the 3. Anyway, they're useless humans. Just kill them. After saying that, she waved her hand impatiently, as if looking at them would pollute her eyes. Chen Guang wanted to laugh. The lineup of 4 god emperors looked very luxurious. But sorry, this is the realm of true martial within the Heavenly Grail. Perhaps you guys are very strong in the endless divine world, and can even destroy countless planes with a single palm. Sorry, this is the heavenly grail. Here your abilities are limited. But here this holy land is like a fish in the sea, a bird in the sky. In this situation, the four of you together are not even enough to crush me with one hand. Frost God Emperor did not know that danger was approaching. He still walked forward with an indifferent expression. White mist rose from his slightly raised right hand, and his entire palm gradually became transparent, turning into an ice crystal state. Although Chu Zijin and Lu Fei knew that the current Chen Guang was very strong, they were still somewhat nervous. The two girls clenched their fists tightly, but they were not at a loss. Instead, they carefully observed the situation. At the same time, they were thinking about how they could fully display the strength of an A-class, and not be a burden to him. Wait a moment, I have a question. Chen Guang raised his hand and asked, "Why are you still talking nonsense when you are about to die?" Although Han Shuang looked like a man of few words, he was actually quite truthful. "I feel that there is no need for you guys to fight me to the death. Wouldn't it be better for us to each go our separate ways?" Chen Guang still had a harmless look on his face. Wind Shadow Deity Emperor, who was standing behind Han Shuang, laughed. "You, this mortal, are quite interesting. However, many people have already said the same thing before. But ants will always be ants. If I say that you are blocking our way, do you understand?" "Oh, I understand." Chen Guang moved his body to the side. "Then I will make way for you guys." Wind Shadow God Emperor's face paled. "You?" Evidently, Chen Guang's unconventional attitude made Wind Shadow God Emperor feel that he had been made a fool of. Peach became impatient. "You really talk too much. Hurry up and kill them. There are a total of hundreds of thousands of mission spaces. Although we have cleared out all the human players, it is hard to guarantee that there will not be any abnormalities among the millions of human players." Hearing this, Frost God Emperor suddenly moved. "That's true. Why do we need to talk nonsense with the dead?" As he spoke, he pounced forward and waved his arm. Along with his movement, a cold current shot out from his palm and swept over like a broom. This cold current expanded to a length of several tens of feet in an instant. It was even more powerful, as if it was going to freeze the air. "I will use my time ability to freeze his ice wind first." Chu Zijin, who was standing behind Chen Guang, finally spoke. Chen Guang waved his hand calmly. "No need. Don't move. They don't know how scary true martial holy emperor is here." As he finished speaking, he took a step forward and raised his right fist. On his fist was a ball of crimson flame. "Fire attribute ability user?" Frost raised her eyebrows slightly. Chen Guang grinned. "Wrong. This is just one of the 400,000 absolute arts that the old man has mastered. Great Sun God Fist." Saying so, he blasted out a punch. As his fist moved forward, an orange-yellow beam of light with a diameter of 3 feet whizzed out with a terrifying high temperature. It was really like a scorching sun in the sky. Chapter 1256. The beam of light blasted out by the great sun divine fist collided with the cold current unleashed by the Frost God Emperor with a roaring flame. But surprisingly, there was no sound. The cold current that could freeze everything did not cause any ripples in the face of the beam of light. It was like snow melting under the sun. That was not the end. After swallowing the cold current, the terrifying heat current rushed toward the four God Emperors. Peach, Windshadow, and Greenwood gods, who were waiting for Frost to kill Chen Guang, and the others with a slap, were dumbfounded. It was not that they were careless. Every God Emperor in the endless celestial realm was an outstanding powerhouse. Even Azure, a descendant of the Lord God, who was born with a unique advantage, still had to grow from a weak person to a strong person. Therefore, although the four God Emperors looked young, they were all experienced people who had killed their way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The reason why they were dumbfounded was that, based on their years of experience as God Emperors, although the three humans looked much stronger than the ordinary human players they had met before, they were still no match for them. In particular, Chen Guang was not even worth mentioning in the eyes of the four God Emperors. The other two women had auras that made them slightly afraid. But this man was just a talker. He did not have any aura at all. However, as soon as the two sides attacked, what they saw completely overturned the common sense of the four god emperors. What he had displayed was simply overwhelming power. The four god emperors could not believe their eyes. Although this was not the celestial realm but the game space, and it was not their real bodies that had come here, but only a wisp of divine sense, their understanding of the rules and judgment of power had not weakened. However, they had misjudged this man. There was only one explanation for this. In this world, this man's power had already completely surpassed the S-class players like them. Seeing that the situation was not good, Wind Shadow God Emperor quickly used his ability and turned into a whirlwind, leading the other two God Emperors to dodge Chen Guang's fiery punch. The Divine Emperor of Frost, who was the closest, reacted a little slower and was slightly grazed by the beam of flames. When he reappeared on the other side, his right shoulder was melted straight away, leaving a gash. A layer of icy mist emerged, and the Divine Frost Emperor's melted shoulder slowly regained its shape. At this moment, among the four gods, Wind Shadow Deity Emperor seemed to be in the worst condition. His face was completely red, and smoke was coming out of his body, as though he had been cooked. After he transformed into a whirlwind, he came into direct contact with the blazing pillar of light from the great sun god Fist. Even though it was only for an instant, it still turned his whirlwind into a heat wave. Why is it so terrifying? Who are you? In the distance, Tao Tan looked at Chen Guang with fear, her face as cold as frost. This time, it was Chen Guang's turn to be surprised. You haven't heard of me? The Frost Divine Emperor's face was already very pale. Now that she was severely injured, her face turned even paler. She glared at Chen Guang and asked, "Are you Dang Wu?" Chen Guang chuckled. "That's not wrong. But in this place, I'm not in the middle of the day." Peach Blossom Divine Emperor frowned. "What do you mean?" Chen Guang waved his hand indifferently. "Nothing. Just now, you said that you cleared out the human players who were on the same mission as you? They're just weaklings who can't even withstand a single blow. So what if we kill them? All right, you guys can't even withstand a single blow in my eyes, so I can kill you." After confirming this matter, Chen Guang decided not to hold back anymore. He was not crazy enough to kill the god race. For example, he did not attack the 8-direction Divine Emperors before. After all, the 8-direction Divine Emperors were restraining their subordinates. However, towards these four gods, Chen Guang did not have such a good temper. "Don't be so arrogant. We don't deny that you're very strong, but don't think that we can't do anything to you." Divine Emperor Greenwood finally stood up. At the same time, he circulated his divine power. The fertile land around them trembled, and the dense forest trembled. Green light rose up from the forest and rushed into the sky before gathering above Divine Emperor Greenwood's head. As the wood energy entered his body, Divine Emperor Greenwood's body rapidly grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Even if I can only use a billionth of my power here, you still can't kill me. No one can defeat me in the forest." Seeing that her capable assistant was preparing to go all out, Peach smiled charmingly. "That's right. In the end, you're just a mortal. You don't understand the power of a god." As she spoke, her body swayed at an extremely mysterious frequency. Wind Shadow and Frost, the two Divine Emperors, were dazzled. However, their absent-mindedness did not weaken their combat power. Instead, the injuries they had received previously quickly recovered. Chen Guang did not understand. "Why are you shaking and twisting? How easily are you satisfied? You can recover on the spot just by looking at a beautiful woman?" "I'm not boasting, but with the beauty of the Peach Blossom Eyes Divine Emperor, the old man has hidden many beauties. Any one of them would not lose to anyone." He completely did not understand the deeper meaning of the Peach Blossom Divine Emperor's actions. Peach Blossom's appearance was originally compatible with the rules. That simple action was a consummate skill that she had honed for countless years. It could make the rule power in her body even purer, and it could have a healing effect on others. On the other side, Divine Emperor Greenwood had already transformed into a giant treant that was 100 feet tall. His entire body was covered in a dazzling green armor. In an instant, He had gathered the energy of countless giant trees in the surrounding 1,000 miles of fertile land into his body. You guys seem very confident, but that's useless. Also, you casually took other people's things without asking for my permission. You blockhead. You really don't know how to be polite. So die for me. Chen Guang suddenly moved. His feet stomped heavily on the ground. At that moment, his body was not very tall, but it was as heavy as a group of mountains. This stomp felt like an earthquake. In the next instant, he appeared in front of Divine Emperor Greenwood and heavily punched the center of the giant Trent's body. When he punched, everyone felt as if the sky was falling and the earth was collapsing. The dust in a radius of several thousand kilometers seemed to disappear, and the ground caved in by several meters. Countless soil appeared in front of him and gathered in front of his right hand. He forcefully compressed it into a stone palm that was less than half a meter wide, and he punched Divine Emperor Greenwood's chest. Divine Emperor Greenwood did not even have the chance to scream before he collapsed. The tree essence that had just gathered on his body quickly dispersed again. With just one palm, this insufferably arrogant Divine Emperor was suppressed on the spot, and he could not be more dead. Peach Blossom, Han Shuang, and Wind Shadow could not understand at all. Wasn't he a fire element ability user? Why did this punch contain the power of the earth? Chen Guang waved his hand, and the stone palm that still had not cracked turned into a mass of extremely solidified quicksand that rushed toward the remaining three gods. Do you want to know the answer? Because this is the realm of true martial, and I am the true martial Holy Emperor. The true martial Holy Emperor city that you are going to is the old man's lair. Do you understand? In this world, I am the heavens. I am the Emperor. I dominate everything. Your divine techniques and divine powers that are merely borrowed from external objects are nothing. Chapter 1257. At this moment, Chen Guang's palm strike was close to the Tao. Even in the endless divine realm, it would be beyond the scope of a mortal god. At the very least, one would need to be a divine general to be able to use it. With the strength of the four divine true bodies, Chen Guang's Tao unification palm strike was nothing more than a grain of light. It wouldn't even be worth raising an eyelid. In fact, the power released by the four divine true bodies in the endless divine realm could completely destroy the entire realm of true martial in the blink of an eye, let alone this super heavy palm strike condensed from 1,000 li of dust. However, at this time, on this true martial island, in this game plane constructed by the heavenly Holy Grail, it didn't matter how strong they were in the divine realm. Here, they could only accept the heavenly Holy Grail's evaluation and could only display S-rank strength. Although there was a difference in strength among the S-class experts, even the strongest S-class expert couldn't be Chen Guang's opponent. Not to mention that Chen Guang was currently in the true martial world, which was filled with yin and yang energy. Why is this happening? Even though the three divine emperors saw Chen Guang's movement, and even though their divine sense images had easily retreated far away, their bodies couldn't react in time. In the blink of an eye, the three divine emperors were fiercely pressed to the ground by Chen Guang. Each of their bodies was covered with a thin layer of dust, but they weighed more than 1,000 li. The dust that Chen Guang had forcefully compressed seemed loose, but it had actually melted the soil of 1,000 li. Even though it wasn't as heavy as a black hole, it was still as heavy as a white dwarf star. Damn you, let us go. Do you know what kind of existences you are provoking? We are only projecting our thoughts here. If our real bodies were here, we would only need a finger to crush you 1,000,000 times over. Celestial Emperor Tao Si, who had always been calm and arrogant, finally panicked and threatened with a shrill voice. Chen Guang walked in front of the three divine emperors and looked down at them. Of course I know that your real bodies are very terrifying, and I also know that you are divine emperors. But so what? In this place I call the shots. As he spoke, the corpse of Divine Emperor Greenwood, who had died in his hands, gradually disintegrated and turned into origin energy. Not only that, but a stream of colorful light surged out of Divine Emperor Greenwood's corpse and flowed toward Chen Guang. Chen Guang didn't have the right to refuse at all. The light rushed straight into his head, and he could only watch helplessly. But strangely, He didn't feel anything at all, as if it was an illusion. Although he didn't know what this thing contained, this smell was very familiar. It was very similar to the situation he had encountered in the slaughtering world. Chen Guang's intuition told him that this was definitely not a bad thing. That was because he was feeling very strange at this moment. He clearly didn't feel anything, but there was an inexplicable strong sense of joy and satisfaction in the depths of his heart. It was as if there was a little bug living in his heart, and also as if there was a voice in his subconscious that was shouting and roaring, frantically telling him that he must obtain more of this thing. Things that were beneficial were more motivating. Chen Guang's gaze towards the three divine emperors changed. It was like a gourmet looking at a Michelin star restaurant. Divine Emperor Han Shuang saw that the situation wasn't good and shouted, "Dangwu, since you know who we are, you should know that even if our projections die in your hands, our real bodies in the God realm won't be touched. Have you thought about the consequences of this?" Tao Si also glared angrily and said, "That's right. If you slaughter the four of us here, we won't let you off easily. When we return to the God realm, we will issue a bounty for you. Anyone who can kill you in this game will gain the friendship of the four divine emperors. They will become our most important distinguished guests. We will even take out a real supreme artifact as a reward. At that time, you will become the enemy of all the divine emperors." Divine Emperor Fengming also said, "If you are willing to let us go, then we can pretend that the matter with Greenwood never happened. No matter how strong you are just a mortal. How can you deal with the anger of the entire God realm? You don't know how many gods in the endless God realm are queuing up to enter the game. There are many divine emperors who are stronger than us." Chen Guang shrugged. "You talk too much nonsense. Even divine emperor Yu Ting doesn't dare to talk to me like this, let alone you." After saying that, Chen Guang slowly raised his palm. Yellow sand appeared in his palm like a small sandstorm was brewing. There were also countless invisible threads connected to the yellow sand that suppressed the three divine emperors. Apart from that, Chen Guang also noticed that the three gods didn't seem to be able to see the multicolored light that surged out from the dead Greenwood divine emperor. Otherwise, they should be able to guess why he suddenly revealed such a strong killing intent. These existences who could be said to live at the top of the pyramid in the endless God realm were like delicious food in his eyes. Even if he told others, he probably wouldn't believe it. Chen Guang gritted his teeth and clenched his palm into a fist. The yellow sand pressing down on the three divine emperors fiercely pressed down on them. The eyes of the three peach-starch gods suddenly widened. They never thought that after saying so much, it would be useless. This guy had no intention of negotiating at all. You will definitely regret this. After saying that, the game of the four divine emperors, led by Peach-Tharch, came to an end. Across the infinitely distant plain barrier, the famous four divine temples in the endless God realm let out a series of loud noises. In an instant, the giant palace complex that floated tens of thousands of miles high in the sky, with an area of more than 900 million square kilometers, suddenly shattered, then turned into countless crystal-clear fragments that fell from the sky. These palace fragments were all residences of the various gods of the four divine temples. After being soaked in divine power for so many years, even a piece of broken tile would be filled with divine power and comprehension of laws. In the hands of existences below the God King level, such as divine generals, it would become a family heirloom that was worth hiding in the depths of the treasury. The energy contained within could even allow an ordinary mortal god to cultivate to the level of a divine general. They would only be a step away from becoming a ruler. This unforeseen event happened too suddenly. The servants of the four divine temples, some divine lords, godly venerables, and divine kings had not yet recovered from the sudden change when the angry roar of the four divine emperors rang in their hearts. "Send down my order. We four divine emperors are willing to take out the Saint Catalog and place a bounty on a human player called Noon in the Origin game. Anyone who can kill this person in the game will be able to see the Peach-Tharch divine emperors face up close for 10,000 years. When these two bounties were announced, the God realm was shaken. The Saint Catalog was a reward from the Saint Lord God, that the 4 divine temples obtained. Even just getting close to it would allow one to receive an incredible infusion of divine power, let alone seeing the peach-arched divine emperor up close for 10,000 years. The last person to receive such benefits was the Wind Shadow Divine Emperor. Before this, he was just a godly venerable who had been chased by a divine lord. On the other side, feeling the anger of the 4 divine emperors before their deaths, Lu Fei said worriedly, "It seems like you've poked a hornet's nest?" Chen Guang laughed indifferently. "What a joke, I'm the hornet's nest here." After saying that, he quietly licked his lips. He did not know what was going on, but absorbing the colorful flowing light that surged out from the divine emperors really made him feel good. Chapter 1258. He hoped that all the god emperors in the endless divine world were as unlucky as these 4. They were short-tempered, stubborn, otherwise he would be too embarrassed to kill them, just like the 8 divine emperors from before. Chen Guang still couldn't bring himself to take someone's life, even if he knew that there were benefits. However, he was not worried that no one would come to die, since the 4 god emperors said that they wanted to kill him. Then when the next task came, as long as he put out his name, there would naturally be countless gods who would overestimate themselves and come to die. In that case, he would have to thank the 4 gods. After walking for a while, a bustling city appeared in front of the 3 of them. The architectural style of this city was very strange. It had a strong Han and Tang dynasty charm, but the material of the city wall was solid cement. Looking at the rather strange clothes of the people going in and out of the city gate, Chu Zijin and Lu Fei felt that their brains were a little broken. Lu Fei decisively started to complain. "What the hell? Why are some people wearing casual clothes, and some wearing ancient clothes? If I didn't know that this is the Jinwu Island in the game, I would have thought that this is the Hengdian Film City." Chu Zijin turned back to look at Chen Guang. Seeing that he had been guessed, Chen Guang smiled embarrassedly. "Yes, this is all my credit." When he was still here as the Jinwu Holy Emperor, he could not bear to see the shoddily built buildings in the realm of true martial. So he racked his brains to come up with the method of burning grass and wood ashes to make cement. Later, because he was not used to wearing long robes, he simply figured out a way to wear casual clothes. He was not a tailor, so he did not have that ability. But who was he? He was the strongest martial sage in the realm of true martial arts. He was the supreme existence at the highest peak of this world. He was admired by millions of people. Tens of thousands of people would flock to him, with just a single word. In order to cater to his tastes, even a martial emperor with a long lifespan would be willing to start from scratch and become a tailor or a fashion designer. There were a lot of talented people in the true martial world. If someone really made casual clothes that Chen Guang liked to wear, then Chen Guang would casually reward them with secret treasures. In the land of true martial arts, where the law of the jungle was practiced to the extreme, Chen Guang was the strongest martial artist. His hobbies were the wind vane, and others would naturally try to imitate him. After all, many people in the realm of true martial had experienced modern casual clothes, and they felt that the comfort of wearing such clothes wasn't comparable to that of traditional clothes. Of course, there were also people who preferred loose robes. And what was reflected in front of these 3 people was this strange mix of modern and ancient styles. They didn't know how many years had passed in the world of true martial after Chen Guang had left. Everyone had just arrived at the 2nd floor, and this had already happened. Chen Guang thought that the deeper they went, the more modern styles would become. After all, he had ascended layer by layer. He hadn't returned to the lower world after he had become a martial emperor. Therefore, most of the things that he had left behind were reflected in the higher world. He remembered that someone had created a steam engine on the 9th floor of the true martial world, according to his idea, before he had left. However, he didn't know whether the internal combustion engine and integrated circuit had appeared or not. It was strange that he couldn't return to the lower world the last time he had come here. However, there was no such drawback this time. His formidable strength didn't affect the operation of the yin and yang qi in the surroundings. On the contrary, The yin and yang qi in the surroundings had become richer because of his existence. Chen Guang speculated that this might be because he had broken through and become a martial sage. He had transcended the shackles of the land of true martial and had become the true master of this world. It might also be because he had entered the transformed world of true martial as a player. The rules of the world had changed, and people like him wouldn't be suppressed. Since there were originally natives wearing modern clothes, the three of them didn't have to worry about being treated as a maverick. They swaggered towards the city gate. However, they still encountered an unexpected situation. Stop. Hongba City charges 300 holy coins per person. You can only enter after paying the fee. 8 guards blocked the city gate. The captain of the guards held a shiny iron spear in front of the three of them and said sternly. While speaking, the captain's eyes quietly drifted over to Chu Zijin and Lu Fei. Although the two women didn't have their original appearances in the real world, the reasonable game system didn't reduce their aesthetics, even though it had remade their bodies. Coupled with the strengthened bodies of the 2 A-level players, as well as the temperament they had cultivated in the real world, the women in a small city on the second floor of the true martial world couldn't compare to them. Chen Guang and the other two were instantly embarrassed. Although the three of them were rich in the real world, they didn't have any currency in the true martial world. I'm sorry, we are just passing by and will leave soon. We left in a hurry and didn't bring any holy coins with us. Can you make an exception? Before Chen Guang could speak, Lu Fei stood up and tried to communicate with the other party. Of course, communication was ineffective. This wasn't a world where they could open the back door just by speaking nicely. The captain of the guard snorted coldly and raised his spear. The cold tip of the spear was aimed at the three of them. Get lost if you don't have money. Hongba City isn't a place where anyone can enter. If I let you in, the city lord will kill me. At the side, Chen Guang covered his mouth and chuckled. He raised his hand to pull Lu Fei behind him and stood in front of the captain's spear. Without turning his head, he said, Big sister Lu Fei, you don't know the rules of this world. There are 2 types of currency in circulation here. This holy coin is for the weak, but it's not very useful. The only currency used is this. As he spoke, he raised his fist. How dare you? How dare you insult the holy coin? This is a capital crime. Unexpectedly, the captain of the guards on the other side exploded. Without saying a word, he pushed the tip of the spear forward, intending to stab Chen Guang. Chen Guang slapped the tip of the captain of the guard's spear with a backhand. With a loud clang, the iron spear flew out of his hand and went straight into the city wall beside him. It completely sank into the wall, and even the handle of the spear disappeared. Then, Chen Guang looked back at the 2 girls and said, Strength is the eternal currency used in the realm of true force. After saying that, he stomped his feet again. A terrifying tremor spread from his feet and spread throughout the entire Hongba City. In the blink of an eye, many people on the streets and alleys were shocked by his aura and tremor, falling to the ground. As for the city guards in front of the 3 of them, they were even more frightened. The captain fell to the ground and stared blankly at Chen Guang. Based on the strength he displayed just now, he was at least a martial venerable on the 5th level. Yet he appeared in the city on the 2nd level. It was simply overwhelming. Can we enter the city now? Chen Guang still had a smile on his face, but his tone was clearly threatening. The captain of the guards trembled and said, You can enter the city, but you used words to humiliate holy coins. There will no longer be a place for you in the vast land of true force. At this moment, Chen Guang had the urge to slap that brat to death. Isn't that brat's head a little too hard? After the 3 of them entered the city, Chen Guang directly entered the city lord's mansion. The city lord was afraid of Chen Guang's strength and welcomed him in. He even offered a large amount of holy coins. Only then did Chen Guang understand why the captain of the guards was so angry. After he left, the forces led by the various layers of true martial Holy Emperor City had uniformly implemented a currency reform. The banknotes and banknotes they issued were printed with his face. Insulting holy coins was equivalent to insulting the true martial Holy Emperor and insulting Chen Guang himself. It was no wonder that the captain of the guards and the passers-by were unhappy with him, even though they knew the difference in strength. Ahem, why are you so thick-skinned? Also, if other players see this banknote, they will probably know that it's you, right? Chu Zijin looked at the holy coins in front of her, and couldn't help but say. Chen Guang coughed twice. What was the weirdest thing in this world? The most awkward thing? That was I'm still alive and well, but my face is printed on the banknote. Fortunately, I didn't kill the captain just now. He must be a fanatical fan of mine. You guys sit down and drink some tea first. I will ask the city lord to make arrangements. Although we can walk very fast now, running to the 9th layer of True Martial Holy Emperor City is still too long. Before I left behind some ideas. I don't know how much time has passed, and whether they have been realized. If we're lucky, we can speed up a lot. The poor city lord was very reluctant to be dragged along by Chen Guang for a long time. Chen Guang casually found an excuse. He said that the three of them came from a hidden sect. The experts in the sect had been practicing hard all year round, and didn't know much about the outside world. This time, they came out because the sect ordered them to do so, so they needed to understand more about the world first and so on. After a long time, the city lord walked out of the door with a head full of doubts. His consciousness was a little fuzzy. Chen Guang pondered over the information he had just collected. If he didn't ask, he wouldn't know. Now that he asked, he was shocked. The flow of time in the true martial realm was very different from the flow of time in the Xianyuan Sea. Since the last time he left, millions of years had passed in the true martial realm. In this long period of time, the many legends and forces left behind by the true martial holy emperor still influenced the development and evolution of the entire true martial realm. However, the evolution of human history in the true martial realm was on a completely different channel from that of Earth. On Earth, it had only taken a few thousand years to develop from an ancient society to a modern high-tech society. If the people of Earth were given another 10,000 years, they would probably be able to cover the entire Milky Way galaxy. If they were given another 1,000,000 years, the people of Earth might even be able to travel across the universe. However, in the true martial realm, Chen Guang had spent 130,000 years to climb to the peak of this world step by step. He had also left behind countless traces of modern society. However, millions of years had passed. Except for a few fields, the level of science and technology in this world had remained at the level of ancient times. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei felt that it was inconceivable when they heard this. Compared to the pace of scientific and technological progress on Earth like Moore's Law, not to mention millions of years, perhaps, spaceships would already be flying in the sky after 1,000 years. However, Chen Guang vaguely knew the reason. There was a big secret hidden in it. The rules of the true martial realm were still incomplete. It was just like how the people of this world could be reborn after they died. The people of this world looked exactly the same as the people of Earth. They all had 7 emotions and 6 desires. However, in the depths of their minds, they lacked a very important thing. That was creativity. The scientific and technological progress on Earth seemed to be the result of continuous accumulation of accidental discoveries. However, it was actually the inevitable result of the burst of inspiration of geniuses that had brewed in the long river of history. The geniuses of the true martial world would choose to practice martial arts in order to cater to the preferences of the Lord Sage Emperor. After all, one's own strength was the only thing one could rely on in this world. After all, one's own strength was the only thing one could rely on in this world. One could cultivate to the pinnacle and become a martial emperor. A martial sage like the Lord Sage Emperor could even rule a world by himself. Forget it. It's not a big deal to fall behind. However, fortunately, they developed the internal combustion engine on the basis of the steam engine. We actually have a plane. Chen Guang shrugged his shoulders. The biggest good news was the information that he had dug out from the mouth of the city lord. The plane would definitely be much faster than the 3 of them walking. According to the city lord, the plane was a new thing that had been born in the last 10,000 years. It still had many disadvantages. Moreover, it was not very stable. Even the accident rate was quite high. Its flying speed was far from the sound barrier. Its popularity was also very low. In the second layer, only a few dozen of the top big cities had this kind of advanced goods. However, it was still better than nothing. It was said that in the fourth layer, more reliable planes began to appear. There were even new planes that combined the internal strength of the martial artist and the internal combustion engine. After listening to the information that Chen Guang had inquired, Lu Fei said, "So what should we do now? Why do I feel that we actually don't need to go to the 9th layer? Although we can directly jump to the 59th island. Won't we waste too much time on the 50th island?" Chu Zijin was not in a hurry to express her opinion. Instead, she was thinking. Chen Guang shook his head and said, "Not necessarily. Calculating the time, let's first go to the 4th layer and find that new plane. With my strength, we should be able to reach the 9th layer in 2 or 3 days. With my understanding of the Tongtian, oh no, the mission system, starting from the 50th island, the floating islands will definitely become more and more troublesome. We will definitely have a chance to jump to the next layer." Lu Fei shrugged. "All right, we'll do as you say." Next, the three of them took the holy coins with Chen Guang's face printed on them. They either took a car, hurried on foot, or rented a cheaper plane. On the third day, the three of them arrived at the second layer's big city, Martial World City. Then, Chen Guang used the same trick and directly went to the city lord's mansion. They got on the plane and set off. In these few days, Lu Fei and Chu Zijin felt like they were on a tour. They saw a lot of local customs that they had never seen before. It was quite interesting. However, a lot of other players, especially low-level human players, had a hard time in the realm of true martial, where everyone practiced martial arts. Many people finally got their hands on the legendary holy coins after going through a lot of hardships, perhaps by working for others, or by extortion. When they got on the transportation to the various layers of true martial Holy Emperor City, these human players were really annoyed by Chen Guang's face. The Protoss players were not much better. At first they were crazy, but soon, they were chased by the countless warriors who were not afraid of death. They could not sleep at night. In this chaotic situation, Chen Guang and the other two finally arrived at the 4th layer's Holy Emperor City. They got on the plane and flew directly to the 9th layer. Even though the city lord, who had been hijacked by Chen Guang, repeatedly stressed that the plane could not withstand the impact of the 9th layer, Chen Guang and the other two did not take it seriously at all. Chen Guang also wanted to know what level the plane could reach if he used his full internal energy to accelerate it. Chapter 1259. Are you ready? Chen Guang, who was wearing a leather hood, turned around and asked the two girls, while standing on the top of the legendary internal energy plane. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei looked around on the oddly shaped plane. They didn't have much confidence. Are you sure we're going to use this plane to fly thousands of miles? You're not joking, are you? Lu Fei already knew a lot about Jinwu Land. As a modern human, she felt that she would fall apart if she were to sit on this thing and fly such a long distance. Chu Zijin didn't say anything. She just looked around at this strange object that was about 15 meters long. It didn't look like it was made of steel, but more like some animal fur and a special sturdy piece of wood. On the whole plane, only the core components, such as the engine, propeller, and transmission gear, were made of special metal that looked strong. As for the other components, especially the fuselage, they were pitiful. It always made people feel that the combination of each component was unstable and could fall apart at any time. What was more tragic was that the plane was open. Even the most experienced and knowledgeable person had never seen an open-top plane. There were open cars and open boats in this world, but an open plane that had to fly thousands of miles was out of the question. No wonder Lu Fei felt uneasy. Chen Guang also felt rather awkward. After all, this was something that countless intelligent life forms in the true martial continent had come up with under his inspiration. Yet it had such a weird and knockoff design. It was embarrassing for him. No, you don't understand. Look at this wood. It's the toughest part of the core of the 1,000-year black iron tree's bottom 3 meters. After 81 days of processing, This black iron tree's hardness and toughness even surpass special steel. After soaking it, it's even more incredible. As he spoke, Chen Guang flicked it with his fingers. Sure enough, it made a tinkling sound. Okay, I'll take what you said as the truth. But what is this? There aren't even screws? The boards are actually connected by ropes? Lu Fei pointed to a place beside her. Chen Guang coughed twice. This isn't an ordinary rope. It's the tendon of a strange beast, Qingli, that lives in the 7th layer of the true martial world. It's a deep cold sea with an area of 7 Pacific Oceans. It looks like a dragon, but not a dragon. It's like a snake, but not a snake. It's 800 meters long, but its tendon is only as thick as a little finger. I don't think I need to tell you how strong this rope is, right? What about the fur? Isn't it used to make fur coats? Why do I feel that it's empty when I jump? This skin is even more amazing. It's taken from the mountain-splitting tiger clan of the Violent Mountain Range, in the 8th layer of the realm of true martial arts. The mountain-splitting tiger clan dominates the Violent Mountain Range. Its skin is only 3 inches thick, but even a martial emperor realm expert's all-out attack would find it difficult to leave a mark on it. Lu Fei and Chu Zijin were speechless. They felt that Chen Guang would always be able to find a way to point out the thorns in the matter. Obviously, what he said sounded like nonsense, but his expression was quite serious, like a teacher giving a lecture to his students. Finally relieved, Chen Guang asked them to fasten their seat belts made of the legendary tendon of the green Li. He sat in the driver's seat and looked at the console in front of him. Well, this couldn't be called a console. As the ace of the modern ace pilots, Chen Guang felt that his knowledge was a bit limited. Other people's planes were operated with all kinds of instruments, but what was in front of him was a freaking bicycle head. In fact, it could also be called a halter. Next to the bicycle head, there were 2 buttons, quite simple and straightforward, written in traditional Chinese characters: accelerate and decelerate. Then it was over. There was no GPS, no altimeter, and no speedometer. Oh yes, there was still a fuel gauge, but God knows how the fuel gauge was transmitted. It seemed that it was not connected by wire, but by a pipe. Chen Guang speculated that it might be using the principle of pressure difference to transmit the liquid level in the fuel tank directly through the pipe, and then drive the scale in front of him. As for the scale, it was quite modern as well. On it was written 1 stone, 2 stones. Chen Guang said, "You win." If he remembered correctly, before he left, he had thrown out the theory of the generator, but it seemed that the millions of years of electrodynamics in the realm of Zhen Wu had been in vain. There was basically no progress. To be able to think of so many unorthodox ways to replace the electric transmission and forcibly create an airplane, it was really hard for the people in this world. Chen Guang twisted the bicycle head, and it was really quite powerful. After a little test, he knew that ordinary people could not twist it at all, even if they used all their strength. At least, it would take the strength of a martial artist at the peak of Pai Jin in the real world to be able to barely twist it. Chen Guang expressed his admiration. Sure enough, there was no electric transmission. This was purely relying on the pilot's own strength to work. If one wanted to fly an airplane, one had to first learn martial arts. With a loud rumbling sound, the airplane, which was rumored to be worth hundreds of millions of holy coins, was finally hijacked and took off. It was swaying, and every part of the fuselage was ringing. It really looked like a broken bicycle in the real world. Legend had it that except for the bell, it rang everywhere. Are you sure we want to fly 10 million miles at this speed? Why do I feel that this is not as fast as you racing? Luffy objected again. Don't worry, I haven't used my strength yet, have I? As Chen Guang spoke, the internal force in his elixir field circulated, and a tyrannical force poured from his feet straight into the 2 grooves under his feet. Something unexpected happened. The airplane, which had been clanking noisily, suddenly became as stable as Mount Tai, and there were no more strange sounds. Not only that, but the entire airplane was surrounded by a strange internal energy shield, which made the airplane, which was originally quite bad at aerodynamics, suddenly become bullet-shaped. The originally slow-rotating propellers seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. The speed of the airplane also broke through the sound barrier in the blink of an eye, and it was still accelerating. 2 times the speed of sound, 3 times the speed of sound. The three of them had no idea what was the principle behind it, so they could only express their admiration. This incident proved that the wisdom of humans was indeed incredible. Even in the realm of true martial where technology had stagnated, even if there was a lack of creativity, as long as there was a foundation, there would still be amazing people who came up with all kinds of wonderful inventions. The mayor of the Holy Emperor City had also neglected one thing. He didn't know that Chen Guang's strength was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. He still understood him according to the mentality of an ordinary warrior. After all, Chen Guang had only used a slightly higher level of strength to conquer the Holy Emperor City. The airplane that was infused with a warrior's internal force was not as simple as simply increasing its speed. Instead, with the help of a very mysterious 8 trigrams device, it was enhanced in all aspects. Chen Guang infused the internal force of a martial sage, which was like giving a 7 or 8-year-old child a Barrett sniper rifle. When it was fired, even the strongest man would not be able to withstand it. 3 days later, the airplane of the three of them finally flew straight to the realm of true martial Holy Emperor City on the 9th floor. The way the three of them landed was also quite overbearing. As soon as Chen Guang's internal force dispersed, the airplane, which had been flying as fast as lightning, suddenly fell apart with a loud bang. Then, the three of them landed in the most magnificent holy city in the entire realm of true martial with a loud bang, as if they were the rulers of the world. Chapter 1260. The three people fell from the sky and crashed into the sacred city, creating a big hole in the solid ground that could withstand a martial emperor's attack. Naturally, it's impossible for Chu Zijin and Lu Fei to remain unscathed after falling from such a high altitude. But with Chen Guang's support, the two of them were unscathed. No matter how powerful their descent was, it was as if they'd landed on a sponge with a fan attached to them. Chen Guang looked down at the huge square. The material of the diamond jade, and the layout of the square. Why did it feel a little familiar? He looked down at the cracked floor under him, and bent down to grab a few pieces in his hand. Sure enough, this was the place. What is this? Why is it so cold? Chu Zijin's hand shook, and she threw out a piece of debris, which hit the ground with a clang. Then she blew on her fingers, which were still emitting white smoke. Chen Guang said, "This is the frost diamond jade produced on the mountainside of the highest peak. It is the strongest stone in the entire realm of true martial. It is even harder than diamond on earth. In the realm of true martial arts, the weakest person, who has the qualification and ability to climb to the mountainside of the highest peak to mine this stone, must be a martial emperor. Moreover, it will take them half a month to slowly chisel out a 1-meter-long square stone. In addition, martial artists practice internal strength on this frost diamond jade, is even more effective. In order to resist the invasion of the cold, the martial artist's internal strength will be stimulated to speed up its own operation, and the practice will be twice the result with half the effort. It can be called a peerless treasure in the realm of true martial." Chu Zijin asked, "So powerful? Is it the same as Xiaolongnu's cold jade bed in the TV series?" Chen Guang said proudly, "I'm afraid that the effect of 10 cold jade beds is not as good as this frost diamond jade. Not to mention this is such a big square." Lu Fei, who was engrossed in Chen Guang's boasting, suddenly jumped up. Even if she was wearing a pair of sneakers, the cold air still penetrated through her shoes and seeped into her bones. "Why are you so clear about it?" she asked. Chen Guang could not help but sigh. "How can I not know? This is what I built in order to comprehend the inner force of the martial saint realm." Chu Zijin immediately responded, "You mean we fell directly into the imperial palace of the true martial saint emperor city?" "Aha, you can say that." Chen Guang nodded, and said as he looked at the 8 giant steel doors that were opening in the distance. After all, the sound of the 3 landing was too loud, and the tremors were too strong. It was impossible for the guards of Saint Emperor City to not have any reaction. "Who are you? How dare he barge into the Holy Land ancestral residence? Kill without mercy." In the blink of an eye, a giant man who was nearly 10 feet tall and clad in golden armor passed through one of the gates at an extremely terrifying speed, appearing in front of the three of them with an agile movement that did not match his body size at all. His momentum was ferocious and as fast as lightning, but when he stopped, his footsteps seemed to be very light. It was rather abrupt, and the transition between extreme movement and extreme stillness only took an instant. Just this simple action of his had displayed his strength, bringing along a powerful gale that blew over. Although Chen Guang's group of three stood on the spot, the shattered frosty Vajrajades were blown away by the gale. Lu Fei and Chu Zijin suddenly became nervous. This giant man gave them too much pressure. Even if he did not make any further movements, the aura of a powerhouse on his body could not be concealed. Yes, since the establishment of the holy city millions of years ago, you are the first group of madmen who dared to trespass here. Do you know that your current actions are provoking the entire true martial world? What you have destroyed is the historical site left by the only martial saint in the history of the true martial world. This is the holy place where the true martial saint emperor used to meditate and practice. Suddenly, a shrill voice came from behind them. The three of them looked back and saw a short man in black clothes standing there like a ghost. There were several bat-shaped black gas floating around him. In the time it took for the two of them to exchange a few words, more and more people appeared beside the three of them one after another. There were 13 of them, and more guards were rushing over from afar. Everyone's face was filled with anger, and they wanted to eat the three of them alive. They were like cats whose tails had been stepped on. The situation is not good, Chu Zijin said nervously. Each of these 13 people gave her the feeling that they were countless times stronger than the 4 S-class Protoss she had encountered before. If the 4 Protoss were S-level, then all of these 13 people were S-level or even higher. Lu Fei bit her thumb and said, "Looks like we've brought you into a pit this time, Chen Guang. But forget it, it's just a game anyway. At most you'll be reset. It's the same even if you're not a player anymore. Chu Zijin, and I will hold them back. Chen Guang, you are the strongest, so you should be able to escape." As she spoke, her body gradually surged with black gas. She was planning to overload her rubberization ability to simulate the legendary super wear-resistant and invincible silicone. Chen Guang raised his hand calmly. "Don't worry, this is a small matter." "A small matter? How can this be a small matter?" The giant man was furious. His face changed dramatically, and he raised his hand and rushed forward. Along with his movement, the huge martial arts arena shook. In the blink of an eye, the giant man appeared in front of the three of them. He raised his palm high and slapped down from above. On his palm, there was a golden phantom that was dozens of feet high. Along with his palm, there seemed to be thunder in the sky, and the wind and clouds seemed to shake. What should we do?" Lu Fei and Chu Zijin's beautiful faces changed. The giant man's seemingly simple palm was far more powerful than the one Chen Guang had displayed in front of them when the three of them had first entered Zhenwu Island. Boy die! In such a big Zhenwu realm, there are no major events. Life and death are not major events, but destroying the relics left behind by the warrior sage is a major event. No one can save you. The countless guards behind the 13 strongest people shouted in unison. That's right. Anyone who dares to insult the warrior sage must be killed. At this time, there were less than 1,000 people in the arena, but their momentum soared to the sky, like 10,000 horses galloping. However, Chen Guang was still calm. When the giant man's momentum reached its peak, he gently pointed his finger. A strong light shot out from his fingertip, but it did not hit the giant man. Instead, it went straight to the palm phantom of the giant man in midair. There was a pop sound. The palm phantom, which seemed to cover the whole world, collapsed with a loud bang along with Chen Guang's finger. Normally, when the force of a strong man like the giant man was dispelled, there should be a lot of energy dissipating in all directions. However, after Chen Guang's telepathic finger, the scattered energy seemed to disappear without a trace. After a moment of silence, the giant man was stunned for a moment. Then, he immediately realized that his move had been broken. he said in shock. Impossible. This is the Buddha's palm, a unique skill passed down by the warrior sage himself. This is a supreme divine skill that surpasses the martial emperor's unique skill. How can it be broken by you like this? Lu Fei and Chu Zijin did not react at first, but then they turned to look at Chen Guang. The two had heard Chen Guang introduce a lot of martial arts in the true martial world, but now they always felt that the Buddha's palm must have been invented by Chen Guang. This guy's bad taste in naming was simply unparalleled. Chen Guang coughed and did not dare to look back, for fear of breaking his move. This is a master, let's attack together. The giant man flew into a rage out of humiliation, and waved his hands brazenly as he roared. As a peerless martial emperor, who had been in the true martial world for thousands of years, he had never encountered such an opponent. He had fought with mysterious masters who had been hidden for many years. He had challenged countless sects when he was young. It took hundreds of years of hard work to climb from the lowest level of the true martial world, from an ordinary martial artist step by step. Then, he became one of the captains of the 9th Sacred City's Guiding 13 Squadron. After spending hundreds of years, he finally understood the Guiding captain-level unique skill, the Buddha's palm. He knew how terrible this unique skill created by the warrior sage was. At this time, he could not accept the nightmare in front of him. On the other side, on the far wall of the square, there were 3 people wrapped in black cloaks. They were also shocked by this scene. Unbelievable. Even we can't break Zhuang Nong's Buddha's palm so easily. Who is this person? We have never heard of such a young expert in thousands of years. The captains of the Guiding 13 Squadron had already rushed forward and used their unique skills. In the Zhenwu Jia, people would draw their swords at the slightest disagreement. Moreover, it was easy to take someone's life at the slightest provocation. So, there was no such thing as outsiders can't interfere in a battle between powerhouses. Moreover, there was no such thing as bullying the weak with numbers. So it was a popular saying in this world. Chen Guang was still quite calm. He even stood in the same place and did not move his feet. He just kept pointing his finger at them. No one would have thought that Chu Zijin and Lu Fei were the ones who were suffering the most. When the 2 girls heard the names of the moves, Pegasus Meteor Fist, Nebula Chains, Little Leaf Flying Dagger, Overlord of Heaven and Earth Fist, 18 Suns as Kitchen Knives, Rising Dragon of Mount Lu, and Cyan Wingback King Claw, they were on the verge of breaking down. They could not understand why these people always liked to shout out the names of their moves. It was obviously a very serious scene. But why did they always want to pull Chen Guang's ear and ask him, "What did you do in the past?" Chapter 1261. However, the people in the true martial domain were the ones who were more traumatized. Every member of the 13 teams of the Holy City's imperial court was a top-notch genius, selected from millions of people in the entire true martial realm. Each of these 13 people's life experiences could even be written into a fantasy novel based on the template of the main character. Even some of the second-generation martial artists from aristocratic families, or some of the elders of their families, were the direct descendants of martial emperors. They had to go through unimaginable hardships if they wanted to become the leaders of the Holy City's Guiding 13 Squadrons. There had never been a lack of geniuses in the true martial realm. However, there were many geniuses in the reincarnation of countless generations. In the end, only 13 people could become members of the Guiding 13 Squadrons and inherit the 13 orthodoxies left behind by the true martial Holy Emperor. Moreover, no matter what kind of technique these martial artists had practiced before becoming a captain, as long as they came in contact with the orthodoxies of the martial Holy Emperor, they would get an incredible improvement. The reason was very simple. Although Chen Guang had not become a martial sage while he was cultivating martial arts in the Holy City, he had already mastered over 100,000 types of martial arts. Even if he was a martial emperor like others, his realm was already incomparable to others. With his martial arts realm at that time, the techniques he created were far superior to the techniques of ordinary martial emperors. For millions of years, these techniques had been regarded as holy scriptures, by millions of people in the true martial domain. They were respected and respected. However, the techniques of the 13 squadrons captains were broken so easily. How could they not be shocked? However, this guy's movements were very relaxed. He only used one finger every time. It was as if he was lifting his hand to brush off the dust on his shoulder. It should be known that each of these 13 people's attacks could easily destroy a big city if they hit the ground. However, it was as if they were hitting the air against this young man. Who are you? What is your purpose? Don't think that you can run amok in the holy city just because you can suppress us. You will become the enemy of the entire true martial domain if you don't give us an explanation for the destruction of the Holy Emperor's ruins. Do you know what kind of situation you will face at that time? The 13 captains finally stopped their bombardment after Chen Guang used one finger to force the other 3 to retreat. The giant man asked with a serious expression. The other 12 people stood behind him with flushed faces. Their expressions were solemn and extremely fearful. Chen Guang ignored him. Instead, he turned around and looked into the distance. The 3 men in black who had been standing on the city wall were shocked. One of them said in a hoarse voice, "He found us." Another person said, "Impossible. We're so far away. And we've even activated the invisibility technique inherited from Lord Marshal Sage. Unless Lord Marshal Sage is here personally, it's impossible for him to see through us." The first person said, "You can't be so full of yourself. This isn't the first time we've been seen through." The third person also said, "That's right. It has already been several million years since the legendary Martial Saint left. If it wasn't for the fact that the various absolute arts he left behind are still being passed down, and the 9 great Saint Emperor cities he founded have been passed down from generation to generation, it would even make people wonder if he really exists." The first person was enraged. "How dare you? You dare to question the existence of the Martial Saint?" The third person panicked. "Don't accuse me randomly. It's not my idea. It's just that there have been some bad rumors coming from the Holy City recently." "Humph. It's just those useless chickens and dogs of the evil ghost faction playing tricks in the dark. If I catch them, I'll tear them into pieces," the old man with the hoarse voice said in a stern voice. It was obvious that he hated the evil ghost faction. But Lord Marshal Sage has indeed left for several million years. No matter how high his martial arts are, or how amazing his talent is, I'm afraid he can't resist the erosion of time. Now I'm afraid, the third man in black said in a low voice, and his mood was depressed. As soon as he said this, the 3 people suddenly became silent. The hoarse voice also became depressed. If he's in the Holy City at this time, I'm afraid the evil ghost faction and the man in front won't be so arrogant here. The second person also said, "Well, since we've been discovered, there's no need for us to hide anymore. The 3 of us are the 3 emperors of the Holy City. We're recognized as the strongest people in the entire true martial domain. How can we lose to them?" A light breeze blew, and the 3 men in black flew over from the air and landed between the 13th captain and Chen Guang. "Lord, why are you here?" the man who was nearly 10 feet tall said in surprise. The hoarse voice took off his hood, revealing an extremely old face. "We've been here for a long time, but we've been watching from a distance." The group of captains looked ashamed when they heard this. They had enjoyed the best cultivation resources in the entire Holy City, but now, they had been suppressed by a wild powerhouse who had appeared out of nowhere and could not fight back. They had even lost face in front of the 3 emperors. "Lord, subordinate," the old man waved his hand. "Don't worry, this mister has reached the highest realm of martial arts. It's normal that you're not his opponent." The captain of the 13th Guarding Squad was even more ashamed. Chen Guang looked at the 3 people with great interest. After a while, he pointed to the old man and said, "You're cultivating the longevity secret." The expression of the old man, who had forced himself to remain calm a moment ago, changed drastically. "How did you know?" Everyone in the true martial world knew that he was an expert in what attribute martial arts. However, this lost technique was a secret technique of the 3 emperor clans of the Holy City. Only the clan lord was qualified to study and learn it when he inherited the throne of the holy city. Moreover, this lost technique had been created by the Lord Martial Sage half a year before he had left the holy city. He had given the longevity secret art and other cultivation techniques to his 3 servants. Moreover, he had repeatedly emphasized that they mustn't tell others the name of this cultivation technique. Even the old man's companions didn't know the name of the old man's technique. They didn't expect that the old man would know it. Chen Guang chuckled before turning to another person. The cultivation technique you're cultivating is called One Punch, and the overlord body you've cultivated is called Superman. The second man was so shocked that he took off his cloak. You, who the hell are you? Chen Guang picked his ears. He couldn't remember how many times he had been asked this question today. He turned to the third man and said, "You're a blade user. Your blade technique and internal power are combined into one. It's called Soul Chopping Blade, right?" The third man's reaction wasn't any better than the first 2. He took off his mask and looked at Chen Guang in horror. The third man was different from the first 2. He wore a strange skull mask on his face. However, it only covered half of his face. Lu Fei and Chu Zijin were youngsters after all. They almost burst into laughter. Isn't this guy wearing the mask of Ichigo Shinozaki in the anime Grim Reaper? Chen Guang coughed twice to remind them not to reveal their secret. Otherwise, they would be embarrassed. How could he tell others that he had casually asked them to keep it a secret when he had created these martial arts? In fact, he hadn't thought much about it. He had simply felt that he had gone too far in making fun of them. So he felt sorry for himself. After all, this was a unique martial art left for the 3 great guards of the holy city. It was known as the strongest unique martial art in the true martial domain. It would be passed down through the ages in the future. If this name were to spread, the millions of people in the true martial domain would talk about longevity secrets, Soul Chopping Blade, and One Punch Man. They would lose their minds. At that time, he didn't expect that he would come back one day. Not only that, but he also brought Chu Zijin and Lu Fei with him. There were also tens of millions of people from the earth and God's race, from the endless divine domain. When he looked at the 3 people again, he had a feeling in his heart. "I'm sorry, brother. I'm a sinner." Since he had played enough, it was time to reveal the mystery. Looking at the 16 people in front of him, Chen Guang took a step forward. "Since you ask so sincerely, take it from me. It's going to become a rocket team. Then, I'll be merciful and tell you." Alas, he couldn't help it. This line was too deep. "Me. I'm the true martial saint you mentioned." As Chen Guang spoke, his imposing aura suddenly rose. A terrifying aura gushed out of his body and instantly enveloped the entire 9th Holy Emperor city. Tens of millions of people in the city were suppressed by this terrifying aura. Those who were below the martial emperor realm, who were closer to the center of the city, couldn't help but kneel on the ground. As for the 3 holy city emperors, the 13 captains of the Godii, and nearly 1,000 imperial guards in front of Chen Guang, they felt the most tyrannical pressure because they were the closest to Chen Guang. For a moment, nearly 1,000 guards couldn't withstand this pressure and knelt on the ground. After half a minute, only the 13 captains and the 3 holy city emperors were still standing. However, they were sweating profusely, and their faces were pale. The legs of the 13 captains were trembling. It was as if they were carrying a heavy burden on their shoulders. As for the 3 holy city emperors, their condition was slightly better. They could still speak. After a short moment of shock, the old man who practiced the longevity incantation gnashed his teeth and said angrily, "Impossible. The holy emperor has passed away for millions of years. How can he still look like you?" One of the 3 holy city emperors also said, "That's right. We grew up worshipping the portrait of the martial saint. Even now we still worship him every day. How can we not know him? The martial saint is not as handsome as you are." Chen Guang's face turned pale. "I might have a fake fan." "Shut up. Looks are just skin deep." As a practitioner of martial arts, one must remember that only a body of divine martial arts can last forever. You don't need to know why I have millions of years of life. You just need to know that your martial saint is back. As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Guang finally unleashed his full power. An earth-shattering pressure came crashing down with a loud rumble. It was like the explosion of the 9 heavens' mysterious thunder, and also like dark clouds pressing down on a city, as if a mountain rain was about to come, accompanied by a series of rumbling sounds of wind and thunder in Chen Guang's dantian. Chen Guang's body gradually floated into the air, and a huge shadow suddenly appeared above his head, which was his original appearance. This phantom was tens of thousands of feet tall, and pierced through the clouds. Light surged on the phantom, making it look like a second sun in the sky. The holy city's 3 emperors and 13 captains could no longer resist the terrifying pressure, and they knelt down with a loud bang. They had lost their dignity and pride, as the strongest experts of the true martial world, when they had knelt down. Even more helplessly, no matter how unwilling and resentful they were, they could only bend their knees. This impulse of submission came from the depths of their souls, and they couldn't resist it. The strange thing was that after these 16 people knelt down, the terrifying pressure on their bodies suddenly disappeared. It was replaced by a comfortable feeling, as if their bodies were bathed in the warm sunshine. They even vaguely felt that their martial power, which had stagnated for a long time, was gradually growing again, and many doubts about martial arts that had been stuck in their hearts suddenly became clear. "Raise your heads and look," Chen Guang said slowly. His voice seemed so grand and distant, as if it had come from thousands of miles away, but it also seemed as if it was whispering in people's ears. At this time, on the street outside the imperial palace of the Holy Emperor's inner city, countless people's voices of worship resounded one after another. "Martial Saint's spirit has appeared. Martial Saint's longevity is boundless." This lowly one pays respect to Martial Saint. The holy city's 3 emperors, 13 captains, and the imperial guards behind them suddenly felt the pressure lighten. They slowly raised their heads and saw Chen Guang's shadow. Everything they saw was exactly the same as the time when Chen Guang had become a martial saint, and he had flown to the peak of the highest mountain. At that time, he had also transformed into this shadow, and then disappeared into thin air. This voice and smile had been seen countless times in the portrait. This person had fought against the heavens, and was invincible. Moreover, his imposing manner had perfectly integrated with the heaven and earth of the true martial world. It seemed as if he was holding the sky in his palm, and stepping on the earth. Since ancient times, only a martial saint had been able to reach this level. "Now, do you believe that I'm the true martial saint?" Looking at the dumbfounded crowd, Chen Guang had a Buddha-like smile on his face, which warmed people's hearts. "Yes, we believe it." Everyone responded in unison. How could they not believe it? Xiao Chen was able to casually break the ultimate techniques of the 13 captains, and he even pointed out the secret of the holy city's 3 emperors. However, the most important thing was still the strength he displayed. He could suppress tens of millions of people in the holy city by himself, and he could control the heaven and earth, and transform into the shadow of the martial saint. Apart from the martial saint himself, there was no one else. In other words, even if this martial saint wasn't the previous one, it didn't matter. After millions of years, there was finally a second martial saint in the true martial world. After settling down, Chen Guang finally returned to the imperial palace of the 9th holy city, which he had been away from for millions of years. Then, he had a good discussion with the 3 emperors and 13 captains about the so-called flying crane to the west, and paying respect to the martial saint's portrait. After being ridiculed, the 3 emperors finally recalled the martial saint's temperament, which was recorded in the ancient books they had read when they were young. It was exactly the same as the martial saint in the records. Chen Guang also wanted to understand what had happened in the true martial world, for millions of years, through these people. "You said that since I left, no one has been able to cultivate to the martial saint realm." The longevity art old man sighed. "Sir, it's true. In these millions of years, there were more than 100 million people who had cultivated to the martial emperor realm. There were even more talented people who had created their own martial techniques. They could even surpass us, who had inherited the martial saint's orthodoxy. However, even such geniuses couldn't cross the most difficult threshold in the end. Countless people fell halfway, one after another. In the end, it made people despair. The bald man sighed as well. In the first 1,000,000 years, we carried forward the many ideals that you passed down, Lord Saint Emperor. In the second 1,000,000 years, many convenient tools were invented and created. For example, the great invention that could change the way of travel in the true martial world, the airplane. Chen Guang waved his hand. Don't talk about your unlucky airplane. I'm really convinced. Okay. In the third 1,000,000 years, the martial techniques that the martial saint had spread all over the world were flourishing day by day. Moreover, countless unique techniques were born on the basis of the secret treasures that you had left behind. Of course, the most tyrannical martial techniques are still the ultimate martial techniques that you had left in the imperial city. However, we are still incompetent. We have enjoyed so many conveniences, but we still can't take that step. The middle-aged man who practiced the soul-splitting saber also sighed. In view of this, the martial artists of the entire true martial world are getting more and more desperate. This isn't just a small number of people. Instead, it's a shadow that shrouds everyone's heart. The evil ghost faction that we mentioned earlier is an evil faction that has gradually risen in the last 100,000 years. Their purpose is to declare that our true martial world is a cage, and all of us are just playthings. No matter how hard the people of the true martial world practice martial techniques, it's just a dream. Hearing those words, Chen Guang was startled. He felt that this argument sounded familiar. Wasn't this the same as the situation that those overlord-level powerhouses in the transient sea had discovered? Moreover, listening to the tone of the soul-splitting saber's successor, it seemed that he also approved of this. Then, why do they hate the evil ghost faction so much? The longevity art old man looked at Chen Guang hesitantly. If the evil ghost faction only preaches this doctrine, we wouldn't have much of an opinion. However, they are targeting the martial saint. What do you mean? The longevity art old man finally said. They say that the reason why you, Sir Martial Sage, were able to become the only person in the entire Zhenwu Jie to transcend in billions of years is because this world was created for you alone. If we are playthings, then you, Sir Martial Sage, are the mastermind behind this amusement park. This is simply disrespectful to you. Therefore, in the last 100,000 years, the 9 of us in the true martial Saint Emperor City have been chasing the evil ghost faction. However, we can't kill them all. Instead, they are getting stronger and stronger. Chen Guang's pupil shrank slightly. This time he was really shocked. If there was a chance, he really wanted to see what kind of genius the founder of the evil ghost faction was. He could completely see through the essence of the true martial world. If that person was able to cultivate to the martial saint realm within 100,000 years, perhaps he was still alive? Chen Guang stood up. I will stop here. Oh, by the way, take me to my palace. I want to see the old well in the inner courtyard of the palace. Unexpectedly, everyone's complexion changed as soon as he said this. Chen Guang asked suspiciously, "What's wrong?" The longevity art old man was very surprised. Reporting to the martial saint, the old well has been stolen. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who were standing behind Chen Guang, exclaimed in unison, "Are you kidding me? How can a well be stolen?" Chapter 1262. In this world, there were people who stole jewelry, and there were also people who stole cultivation methods and secret manuals. There were also people who stole elixirs and secret recipes, and there were even people who stole. In this world, there were people who robbed others of their property, their treasures, their houses, and even women. However, it was impossible for anyone to steal the well. What was there to steal from a well? What was the value of it? Besides, a well was not something that could be taken away in a small box. It was rooted in the ground. A normal person would not know how to steal it. Chen Guang was slightly startled. His mind was racing. At first he felt that it was impossible, but the surprised look of the old man didn't seem to be a joke. That meant it was true. He hadn't taken the so-called evil ghost faction seriously before. He had the strength of the true martial world. So it didn't matter what kind of demons and monsters there were. He only needed to use his strength to break them. He could slap them with his palm, And even the most powerful genius would have to kneel on the ground and admit defeat. No one could resist his strength. As the only martial sage, when he entered this world, his whole mind had been integrated with the realm of true martial. It could almost be said that he was the realm of true martial, and the realm of true martial was him. Perhaps it was impossible for him to know everything in the true martial world, which spanned millions of miles. However, it was impossible for him to be unaware of the appearance of a powerhouse of the same level, who could rival him in his own world. In fact, he would certainly be attracted by the aura. There seemed to be only a fine line between martial sage and martial sovereign, but it was like a natural moat. Between the two, there was an absolute crushing of strength. They were not on the same plane. No matter how many martial sovereigns swarmed him, they would not be able to defeat him with one hand. But now, he was really afraid of the Ghost faction. They had their eyes on the ancient well. There was only one explanation for this. The Ghost faction not only saw the truth that the realm of true martial was born because of him, but they also perceived the test task that all players participated in. Moreover, he didn't know what their purpose was, but they had stolen the most important task tool, the ancient well. Sir, it's like this. Although the evil ghost faction is getting stronger and stronger, our 9 great holy cities still have an absolute advantage. After all, almost all the martial emperors come from the holy cities' clans, and what they learn is the 10,000 laws orthodoxy that Lord Martial Sage left behind. They also listen to the holy cities' dispatch. But about a few decades ago, 2 extremely powerful experts suddenly appeared in the evil ghost faction. Even if it was only one of them, we would not be a match for them, let alone both of them at the same time. Chen Guang asked in surprise. Even the 3 of you can't do it. The 3 of them looked at each other awkwardly. One of them touched his own head and said in an ashamed tone, "Although we have inherited your orthodoxy and are sitting on countless generous resources, we are indeed no match for those 2. Any one of them would be able to take on 3 of us at once without falling into a disadvantageous position. However, these 2 are inseparable." The longevity art old man also said, "Yes, we have been unable to fight back since these 2 appeared. Most of the time, we have been holed up in the city, giving them the opportunity to take advantage of us. In recent years, the evil ghost faction's actions have become more and more unbridled. Even many members of the evil ghost faction are moving around in the Holy Emperor City. But we never expected that these audacious traitors would dare to sneak into the Imperial Palace a year ago. They even dug up the ancient well in the backyard of Lord Martial Sage's palace." The middle-aged man who practiced the soul-splitting saber also said angrily, "That's not all. They didn't just steal the ancient well in our holy city. The 9 holy cities from the 1st to the 9th layer of the true martial domain were almost all murdered at the same time." The longevity art old man sighed. "We thought that their behavior was just another provocation to us. So we were trying to accumulate our strength and prepare for a counterattack. I didn't expect Sir Martial Saint to return after millions of years for the sake of these 9 ancient wells. It's easy to guess that they're plotting something before they take action." Chu Zijin, who was behind Chen Guang, muttered in a low voice, "Since the ancient wells in the 9 holy cities have been stolen, our previous worries are unnecessary. Anyway, no one can find the ancient well now. No matter which layer they are on, they can't jump down. I'm afraid this is actually part of the mission test." Chen Guang only listened, but he didn't think so. He didn't intend to point out Chu Zijin's speculation. No matter how smart she was just a player who participated in the game. She didn't know as many secrets as he did. She couldn't transcend the identity of a player and look at the whole thing from a higher point of view. She didn't know that there were people in the true martial domain who had insight into the ancient well in advance. It was a big blow to Chen Guang. The 3 emperors of the holy city also didn't know what Chen Guang was thinking. The bald man said happily, "But now it's all good. Lord Martial Sage, you are here in person. No matter how powerful the 2 experts of the evil ghost faction are, they can't do anything." Chen Guang casually said, "Don't worry. This matter has to be considered in the long run." Tell them not to rush to attack the people of the evil ghost faction. Now that the entire true martial domain knows that I have returned, the evil ghost faction will certainly restrain themselves. I also want to have a good chat with these people and see what they are thinking. Since all the ancient wells have been stolen, they couldn't jump down for a while. Fortunately, Chen Guang and the other two settled down in the imperial city. After millions of years, the imperial palace of the ninth holy city finally welcomed its old master again. In any case, the news of his return had already been leaked by the huge phantom in the sky, so Chen Guang didn't need to hide it anymore. He also didn't intend to suppress the happiness of the countless martial artists and civilians of the true martial world. For a moment, the entire holy city was jubilant. Lanterns and streamers were hung everywhere. This jubilant atmosphere spread to all the major cities of the true martial domain like wildfire, along with the news of Lord Martial Sage's return. Led by the 9 great holy cities, which had special information transmission channels, hundreds of billions of people in the true martial domain celebrated together. Accompanying Chen Guang, Lu Fei stood on the gate of the imperial palace. Looking at the lively celebration below, she couldn't help but sigh. How many stories have you left in this world? It's been millions of years. I don't know how many generations have passed. If it were on our Earth, it would be from the Yuanmo era to the modern era. But why do these people still worship you so much? Chen Guang chuckled. You don't understand, do you? This is called popularity. Lu Fei said again. F*CKU. In my opinion, since you have this ability, why don't you just drag out the people of the evil ghost faction that they've been talking about? Wouldn't you know where they've hidden the ancient well if you interrogate a few more people? It's not that simple. Let's go and have a good meal first. After that, we'll have a comfortable sleep. We've been flying in the sky for 3 days straight, and we've only had dry rations to eat. Don't you two feel tired? I feel sorry for you. As a result, Lu Fei and Chu Zijin fell asleep in the side room next to Chen Guang's palace. Then he quietly sneaked out. He wanted to look for the 3 emperors of the holy city and ask for the portraits of those 2 experts that they had been talking about. He had a vague feeling that such powerful people weren't allowed to appear in the true martial domain. In his opinion, the 3 emperors of the holy city were excellent people. Moreover, they were quite diligent. The youngest among them, the bald old man, had been practicing for thousands of years. So there was no reason for him to be subdued by 2 people who had appeared out of nowhere. They had practiced the peerless divine technique that the old man had created with painstaking efforts before he had left. However, he hadn't expected that his plan would come to nothing. The 3 emperors had fought with those 2 people several times. However, they had never seen their appearance. The only thing they could confirm was that those 2 people weren't men. Chapter 1263. 2 women. Chen Guang was even more shocked. It was not that he looked down on women, but the 3 emperors of the holy city were suppressed by these 2 women. Before the appearance of these 2 women, no matter how powerful the evil ghost faction was, they could only drag out an ignoble existence under the tyrannical power of the 9 holy cities. Apart from that, in the millions of years of history, the 9 great holy cities were united, becoming the most powerful force that ruled over this world. They had also completely changed the situation in the past, where every layer had countless cities fighting for their own interests. Even the 9th level, where experts gathered, the 10 great martial emperors, which had been stable for countless years, had been replaced by the holy city. The reason was simple. In the hundreds of thousands of years since Chen Guang's rise, he had used his strong means and power to suppress everyone. Anyway, he knew that people in this world would become heroes again after 18 years. He was too lazy to reason with people here. He followed the principle of those who obeyed him would prosper, and those who disobeyed him would perish. After he killed 3 of the 10 great martial emperors, regardless of whether they were convinced or not, they decisively chose to surrender. He generously bestowed various cultivation methods that he had personally created to those who were smart enough to adapt to circumstances. As a result, more and more people came to rely on him. This was also the true reason why the 9 holy cities had been able to stand for millions of years without collapsing. All the geniuses and experts in the world were in his hands. Who could topple them? This meant that the 3 divine skills created by Chen Guang had the ability to suppress a world. Since he couldn't obtain any useful information, Chen Guang decided to take a nap. At this time, Chen Guang did not know that in the true martial Holy Emperor city on the 5th level, 2 girls were sneaking into the inner courtyard of the palace of the 5th Holy Emperor city under the cover of the night. Then, the 2 of them looked at each other and saw the so-called ancient well, which was said to have been dug 10 feet into the ground, leaving only a well-shaped pit. Sweetheart, we are not in the wrong place, are we? This is the place in the mission prompt. What is going on? Is this a well? This is just a trap. Wu Miaowan lowered her voice and said carefully. Xianqin checked her mission prompt again and again, looking confused. The 2 of them were lucky. The place where they landed was in the central plain of the 5th level of the true martial realm, not far from the 5th holy city. The 2 of them carefully explored along the way, passing through 3 small cities and a big city, and finally found the way to the 5th holy city. Wu Miaowan was the eldest disciple of the Thousand Flower Valley, and now the leader of the Thousand Flower Valley. She had mastered the unique skill of alchemy and healing. She had earned a lot of holy coins by diagnosing people along the way, so she did not have to worry about the entrance fee. What made them even happier was that since they came to True Martial Island, their internal strength had inexplicably increased with the passage. In addition, the 2 of them have now earned a lot of reward points through perfect performance in the jumping-off building quest system. At this time, they have already reached the sea-level realm. The innate abilities of the players in the game, along with the martial arts foundation they had, allowed them to bring out strength that far surpassed their realm in the game in this world. Even if they were to compare themselves to the strongest martial tyrant in the 5th level, the difference between them would not be great. Thus, even though the 2 of them would occasionally run into some small fries along the way, it was still a daunting experience without any real danger. After entering the 5th holy city, they were much more restrained. After all, there were many experts here. It took a lot of effort for the 2 of them to finally sneak into the bedroom. Who would have thought that they would come up empty-handed? What should we do now? Wu Miaowan asked again. Xianqin looked distressed. You ask me, but who should I ask? Wu Miaowan suggested again. By the way, isn't the portrait of the true martial Holy Emperor Chen Guang? It seems like our minister is doing well in this world. Why don't we find a way to contact him? After a brief pondering, Xianqin rejected this idea. That's not appropriate. The true martial Holy Emperor only looks similar to Chen Guang, but we can't be certain that it's him. Besides, even if it's him, you know it's easy to meet the King of Hell, but difficult to deal with, right? I heard that the news of the Holy Emperor's return came from the innermost 9th level. He must be on the 9th level now. God knows how far away he is from us. How can we contact him? If we expose our identity, people may not believe us. What if the people down there have ulterior motives? What should we do? Wu Miaowan nodded, thinking that it made sense. The 2 of them had seen a lot in the past few days. Although the true martial Saint Emperor had countless fans in almost all cities, there were still many unfavorable rumors about him, especially the evil ghost sect, which had stirred up quite a bit of trouble. If the sinister spirit faction knew that there were 2 old acquaintances of the true martial Holy Emperor, they would swarm over as if they had found a treasure. There was no better hostage in the world. Therefore, it was better to be safe than sorry. After some discussion, the 2 of them decided to take it slow. After spending a lot of effort, Xianqin and Wu Miaowan finally left the imperial city without anyone knowing. They found a hotel in the outer city and stayed there. The 2 of them were in a difficult position. They were worried that the other members of the Heaven Division would encounter a similar situation. They did not need to worry about martial artists like Aunt May who were at the Master Realm. However, the ordinary members of the division, who were not as powerful as the 2 of them, might encounter powerhouses that they could not afford to offend. In the dead of the night, the moon was dark and the wind was strong. The atmosphere of celebrating the return of the Holy Emperor was very festive. However, the undercurrents were surging in the 9 great holy cities. The members of the sinister spirit faction in the 9th holy city withdrew one after another that night. Those who could return to the next layer went far away. Those who couldn't return went to other cities in the 9th layer. Some of them were on the wanted list of the holy city. They were too eye-catching. So they simply ran deep into the mountains and forests. They planned to lie low for a while. The result of such a change was that the influence of the sinister spirit faction in the holy cities from the 8th layer didn't weaken. On the contrary, it strengthened. In addition, the influx of a large number of players finally attracted the attention of the natives of the true martial domain. The strength of these outsiders varied. Some were strong, and some were weak. The powerful ones could even surpass the original suppression of the true martial domain. They could move freely in the first 5 layers with the strength of a martial emperor. Most of these people were Protoss players. Human players were like ants in their eyes. Not to mention these natives of the true martial domain, who were born with incomplete souls. They were simply rampaging. Just because of the entrance fee, they killed without saying a word. However, such people were the minority. Moreover, after seeing that the warriors of the true martial domain were not afraid of death, even the S-level Divine Emperor players became a lot more well-behaved. After all, even the most powerful people had to understand the principle that 2 fists couldn't fight against 4 hands. There was really an incident where an S-level Divine Emperor was killed by an entire city of people at the city gate. On the contrary, the Earthlings were relatively like fish in water. Firstly, the Earthlings had experienced a lot in real life, so their emotional intelligence was relatively higher. Secondly, the human players were completely suppressed by the Protoss in the previous missions. The human players had rich experience in seeking survival in the cracks. After coming to the true martial domain, this strange place, they were well-behaved like Xianqin and Wu Miaowan. Although the human players also suffered a lot of losses, and the number of casualties was more than the Protoss players, the survival rate of the human players was much higher. In addition, for large organizations like the Heavenly Division, only the 2 deputy directors, Xianqin and Wu Miaowan, were relatively unlucky. They were still wandering outside and did not meet their colleagues. Many other people had also met in 2s and 3s. The Heavenly Division, which was full of internal martial arts practitioners, was like a fish in water in the true martial domain. However, everyone had a tacit understanding not to expose their relationship with the suspected Holy Emperor, the head of the Heavenly Division, Chen Guang. However, a small number of human players thought that they had finally found an organization after seeing the portrait of the Holy Emperor on the street. They declared their relationship with the Holy Emperor in various ways. Even if Chen Guang did not know them, these people bragged that he was a relative or even a friend. If they were lucky enough to meet a city lord or a ruler with a good attitude, they would be tricked into believing them. Then, they would be sent on a plane to the 9th holy city. However, most of them were unlucky. They were charged with the crime of despising the Holy Emperor and imprisoned in the water prison. Some people were really targeted by the evil ghost faction. They were inexplicably tied up and tortured. They told everything that happened on Earth, especially about Chen Guang. The result was that the philosophy that the evil ghost faction had always adhered to was once again confirmed. The only Holy Emperor was the root of all disasters. He enjoyed his life in the world called Earth, but he trapped hundreds of billions of people in this sealed world to be his puppets. This was simply shameful. The players who leaked the information did not end up well. They either died at the hands of the enraged members of the Shady Ghost faction, or were imprisoned. There had not been any substantial progress on Chen Guang's side. However, the true martial domain, which was bustling with activity in the outside world, was in complete turmoil. The next morning, the 9 holy cities, which had been dormant for many years, finally launched a counterattack against the evil ghost faction. The members of the evil ghost faction, who were proud of their tyrannical strength finally, saw the terrifying strength of the 9 holy cities. In fact, The sacred city had only been afraid of those two peerless experts over the years. Lord Holy Emperor, we have tried to torture those captured traitors. However, it seems that they don't know where the ancient well is hidden. Now, I'm afraid we can only wait for the two top experts of the evil ghost faction to come out. Then Lord Holy Emperor will personally capture them. After 7 days, the people of the evil ghost faction had been hunted down. Even many martial artists who had fled to the deep mountains had been captured. However, there was still no news about the whereabouts of the ancient well. Chen Guang had a headache. Are the other 8 holy cities in the same situation? According to the report, it is the same. That's it for the time being. Send more people out of the city to search for the members of the evil ghost faction. Those 2 people will not be able to sit still and take action. He hadn't done nothing during these 7 days. He had commanded the 9 great holy cities to deploy their troops on one hand. On the other hand, he had used his martial sage realm to communicate with the true martial world. He had tried to find those 2 mysterious experts by sensing their aura. However, the result was not satisfactory. Even though he had filtered almost all the martial emperors in the entire true martial domain with his Qi, he still found nothing. It was as if those 2 people did not exist in this world from the beginning, just like him. In addition, many human players had been sent to the 9th holy city. Chen Guang did not meet them. He just asked one of the captains of the Godii, 13, to settle them down and give them a safe place to stay. Now even he could not find the location of the ancient well. No one could jump into it. So it was useless to meet them. With Chen Guang's current identity and status, he was not in the mood to deal with all the human players. It was purely a waste of time. He was also too lazy to explain to everyone why he had become a holy emperor here. Chapter 1264. We can't go on like this. Why don't we find a way to contact Chen Guang tomorrow? I heard that although there are no telephones or mobile phones in this world, there are devices similar to telegrams. As long as we find a way to contact Chen Guang, there shouldn't be any problem. A few days later, Wu Miaowan sat helplessly on the bed in the guest room of the hotel. Her mood was quite gloomy. Xi and Qin was also very distressed. The 2 of them had stayed here for many days, but they had basically gained nothing. Even though the 2 of them had tried their best to inquire about the whereabouts of the ancient well mentioned in the mission description, they had found nothing. Even the people who came out of the palace of the 5th holy city were still secretive and didn't dare to say much. All right, let's call more people tomorrow and go straight to the city lord. We have so many people. Nothing should go wrong. Xi and Qin came up with an idea. In these days, members of the Heaven Department had gathered in the 5th holy city one after another. Although everyone had changed their appearance, the members of the Heaven Department had already agreed on the secret code. They easily matched each other and gathered together. Up until now, there were at least 1,000 people in the inns, hotels, and hostels of various sizes near the inn that the 2 of them were staying at. Although they were hidden in the dark, they were definitely a great force that couldn't be ignored in the 5th floor. The next morning, Xi and Qin and Wu Miaowan gathered everyone together and went straight to the city lord's mansion, which was built next to the palace. The city lord of the 5th holy city was a revered martial artist for many years. In fact, he already knew that there were many foreign guests in the city. However, the human players were relatively low-key and didn't easily cause trouble. So, the city lord simply let them be, and let them be. Now the natives of the true martial domain roughly knew that the foreign guests were divided into 2 types. Some of them were arrogant and unruly. They would kill if they didn't agree with them. The other group was relatively weak, but their temper was relatively better. They were very easy to deal with. Xi and Qin and Wu Miaowan represented this group of people. They integrated quite well. Many people even brought many new things through communication and cooperation with the martial artists of the true martial domain. For example, some people had used their professional knowledge to improve the internal combustion engine train that had been used in the true martial realm for God knows how many years. Some people had even drawn the blueprint of an ink printer. This was also a great contribution. Chen Guang had brought great changes to the true martial world in the past. So, what about these millions of people? City Lord, to tell you the truth, we are all subordinates of the Sage Emperor in another world. We've also returned with the Saint Emperor, but for some reason, we've ended up on the 5th floor. I wonder if the City Lord can help us think of a way to send us to the 9th sacred city, to meet up with the Saint Emperor? The City Lord frowned slightly. We did send some people to the 9th holy city a few days ago, but the plane hasn't returned yet. It will take at least half a month. Moreover, airplanes are the most important weapons of our true martial world. There are no more than 20 airplanes in the entire 5th layer. But you have nearly 1,000 people here. So, we don't have the strength to carry them even if we want to. Xianqin and Wu Miaoan looked at each other. The City Lord's attitude was much better than what they had expected. At least he didn't reject them outright. Moreover, his attitude seemed very friendly. In that case, we'll have to trouble the City Lord. After the plane returns, we'll have to trouble you to arrange it for us. We'll certainly put in a good word for the City Lord in front of the Saint Emperor when we meet him. Thank you, Heroine Xian and Heroine Miaoan. By the way, this city also has a train to the 9th sacred city. Why don't you choose the train? There's no need for the train. It's too far away. It'll take many years, even if we travel 1,000 miles in one day. The territory of the true martial world was too vast. According to Xianqin and Wu Miaoan's plan, only a few dozen people could take the plane to the 9th sacred city to meet up with Chen Guang. The rest of the people could only wait in the 5th sacred city to find the ancient well. The ancient well was a part of the mission. Even if it was lost now, it couldn't possibly disappear. They could find it sooner or later. Then there's no other way. However, I have to remind you that the lords of the 9th floor are chasing after the members of the Evil Ghost faction. The 9th floor is guarded by the Saint Emperor. The Evil Ghost faction's rascals are fleeing in all directions. They're in a constant state of anxiety. However, as far as I know, many experts of the Evil Ghost faction are fleeing from the upper floors. My strength as a revered martial artist is enough to suppress a region. However, I've heard that many senior revered martial artists who had wandered in the 6th and 7th floors have also returned here. This is an eventful period. Everyone should be careful. Xianqin cupped her hands towards the City Lord. Thank you for reminding us. We'll be careful. At this time, Xianqin and Wu Miaoan also knew that although the aborigines of the true martial world practiced martial arts, they were restricted by the natural rules of this world. Once their strength surpassed the revered martial artist and reached the martial lord level, they couldn't stay in the 5th floor for long. If the person who came was only a revered martial artist, they wouldn't be a threat with the strength of the entire Heaven Division team. It should be known that the cultivation of these two people was only at the skin strength level in reality. However, there were 2 Master Realm seniors among the Heaven Division members who had gathered here. These 2 seniors player level had already reached B rank. The strength they enjoyed in this world was far beyond that of ordinary martial artists. They could even fight against a martial king in the 7th floor, let alone a mere revered martial artist. After Xianqin and Wu Miaoan left, the advisor next to the City Lord came over. Sir, do we really have to arrange a plane for these 2 little girls? The City Lord rubbed his brows in distress. What else can we do? The Saint Emperor has already issued an order. Anyone who takes the initiative to ask us for help and wants us to send them to the 9th holy city must not be refused. The advisor was somewhat unwilling. That's a pity. I saw that there were some experts beside those 2 little girls. I originally hoped that they could stay and help us fight against the Evil Ghost faction. The City Lord said in a carefree manner. There's no hurry. We can only send a few dozen people, right? Only a few people can leave, but there are still many who stay. Moreover, now that the Saint Emperor has returned, the Evil Ghost faction won't be arrogant for long. After this period of time, there's nothing to worry about. I heard that the situation in the 9th floor is gradually stabilizing. The experts in the 9 holy cities are also gradually coming down. The advisor said happily, That's good. That's good. No one expected that on that afternoon, Xianqin and Wu Miaowan, who were originally resting in their room, would suddenly disappear. There was even a Master Realm Senior guarding in front of their door, but he did not notice them at all. This matter was originally not a big deal in the Fifth Holy City. It was nothing more than the loss of 2 foreign guests. However, early in the morning, the city lord of the Fifth Holy City had already reported the matter of Xianqin and her team of nearly 1,000 people. The Saint Emperor, who originally did not care much about the other foreign guests, took this matter very seriously. He personally sent a telegram back, requesting that the 2 leading girls be sent to the 9th Holy City as soon as possible. The city lord of the 5th Holy City was about to take out a military plan that could not be used easily under normal circumstances. But in the end, he heard that they were lost. He was scared out of his wits. The sky is overturned, bright and clear. In broad daylight, these people are gone just like that. The city lord looked at the empty hotel room with a dark face. The experts of the Heaven Division were also confused. In order to guard against the God Clan and the Evil Ghost faction, and considering that Xianqin and Wu Miaowan were deputy ministers, the 2 of them had never lacked security since they met. Not to mention a martial venerable, even a martial emperor on the 8th floor, would not be able to take them away without being noticed. What the hell was going on? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.